to the management of Lahore College for Women University for facilitating this event and hosting this event in this prestigious institute, and we are very grateful to you. My name is Dr. Fahim Jahangir. I'm Chief Policy at PIDE, and I'm going to give you a quick overview of this RBF, which is the Reform for Brighter Future agenda, and I'm going to give you a quick overview about the day, like how we are going to discuss certain topics, agenda, policy areas in this session today. So if you can put on the presentation. So if you look at the current economic crisis, Pakistan is at a critical decision point. Economic policies over past decades have negatively impacted sustainability, productivity, investment that drives recurrent economic crisis and disproportionately affecting the poor and vulnerable. Many countries have taken the opportunity presented by the crisis to pursue fundamental shifts in economic policy making. This event will contribute to ongoing debates on the policy shifts required to create sustainable, resilient, and inclusive growth in Pakistan. Now, before I present you the agenda of the day, I'll just quickly take you through where we are at the moment. So if you look at this graph, this is the GDP graph of Pakistan. So if you look at, So this is the GDP growth graph of Pakistan. So if you look at that, from 1951 to date, there is boom and bust happening every now and then. The more concerning point is that if you look at the trend line, which is here, it's declining. Hum lose kar rahe hain. It's declining, it's going down, which is very concerning. If you look at that, the investment kitni ho rahi hai is mulk ke andar, we are at the bottom. Look at India, look at Bangladesh, look at Sri Lanka. All other countries are doing far better than Pakistan. We are losing. IMF, every now and then, every almost second year or third year, we are into an IMF program. Why? Because I think jo disease hai, hum uska proper ilaj nahi kar rahe hain. So it's something like we have to go back to IMF begging for not only for foreign exchange and money, but for structural adjustment things, tax reforms and other matters. And this is happening again and again. We are now into the 23rd program with the IMF, and if we don't sit और हम उसको संजीदगी के साथ नहीं रहेंगे तो ये continue रहेगा. This is going to continue if we don't fix it now. If you look at the plans, अगर आप कहें कि हाँ problems हैं, हम सोचते नहीं हैं या हम उसके बारे में कुछ करना नहीं चाहते, so that's wrong actually. This is only the federal government plans I'm showing. We have annual development plans, we have 5-year plan, we have long-term visions, we have MDGs and SDGs kind of international agenda with us, we have sectoral policy plans, we have other policy initiatives, we have projects, but there are too many plans and there are too little development. So this is quite concerning again. So there is a need to focus on critical policy areas. The World Bank has launched an engagement and outreach program to contribute to the ongoing public dialogue. This is the second phase of that dialogue. World Bank has started working on it, and we were engaged. I'll just show you very quick documentaries on that as well. But in the first phase, what we have done is that we engaged at a different level, at local level, at subnational level, at national level, and at the moment we are into this engagement and outreach for economic policy reforms in Pakistan. So there are primarily 8 areas. So it's something like there are multiple areas जिसको focus करने की ज़रूरत है, but there are primarily 8 areas World Bank is focusing on. These include accelerating progress on child stunting. According to the data available, around 40% of our children are stunted. That's again quite alarming. अगर आपके बच्चे 40% stunted हैं, it means कि आपकी जो आने वाली नस्ल है जिसने इस मुल्क को भाग दौड़ को संभालना है, वो कैसे संभालेगी, कैसे चलाएगी चीज़ों को, सब कुछ कैसे मैनेज होगा if it's stunted. So there is an immediate need to accelerate progress on this child stunting. The second thing is improving learning outcomes. This is about education. This is about you, all of you. It's not only about getting a degree from a university and looking for a job. It's also about the quality of that education. It's also about the skill you get from these institutes and from other sources. So it's about so many things. It's about the child education. It's about girls' education. If you look at the numbers, तो बहुत कम लड़कियां जो हैं वो आप जहां बैठी हैं वहां तक पहुंचती हैं. It's not common actually. The third thing is transforming the private sector. Again, it's a very important policy area. क्योंकि प्राइवेट सेक्टर को जब तक आपको सपोर्ट नहीं मिलेगी, प्राइवेट सेक्टर ग्रो नहीं करेगा, इकोनॉमी ग्रो नहीं करेगी. गवर्नमेंट्स का जो रोल है वो सपोर्ट करने का तो हो सकता है, फैसिलिटेट करने का तो हो सकता है, बट जहाँ पे इन्वेस्टमेंट आती है, जहाँ पे मल्टीप्लाई होता है, जहाँ से सेक्टर्स ग्रो करते हैं, दैट इज़ द प्राइवेट सेक्टर, एंड दैट इज़ एक्सट्रीमली इम्पोर्टेंट. Unleashing the agri-food sector. Again, our economy depends on agriculture a lot. It's an important area जिसमें बहुत बड़ी proportion जो है हमारी population की उसकी ज़िंदगियाँ जुड़ी हैं agriculture के साथ. So it's another area. Then achieving sustainable energy, you know that. I don't have to explain that, how important this area is, how important energy is, rather, whether it is electricity or gas or, petrol or anything. But it's an extremely important area. Without that, the engine of growth cannot work. Then comes strengthening the investment revenues, the government revenues, in fact. Governments जो हैं वो जब तक revenues generate नहीं करेंगी taxations के through, they will be unable to spend that back to the population. So that's very important that they actually should be able to generate sufficient revenue so that they can, revert back to their population and they can take care of that population and their welfare also. So there are always a debate about कि जी क्या करें. टैक्स तो लगाएं, बट टैक्स क्या उन्हीं पे लगाएं जिन पे टैक्स लगा हुआ है, या देयर इज़ अ नीड टू expand that tax net with other things. And then there is also a very important area to rationalize the government expenditure. It's about, you must have heard the news about कि जी Fortuner गाड़ियाँ ले ली हैं, बड़े घर ले लिए हैं, foreign visits लग रहे हैं, perks and privileges and plots और ये सब कुछ चल रहा है. So I think it's time to decide that we should talk about these things. We should talk about कि हमें rationalize कैसे करना है. So there is a balance between. So either तो आप अपना revenue इतना increase करें कि आपको expenditure की उतनी फिक्र ना हो. But अगर आपका revenue उस speed से increase नहीं कर रहा है, so you have to worry about your expenditure. ये आप अपने घर में भी यही देखते हैं. जब आपके पास पैसे ज़्यादा नहीं होते हैं तो you don't go for durables. आप अपना AC या गाड़ी चेंज करना जो है वो कुछ महीने डिले कर देते हैं because you know that I don't have sufficient funds available. So that is exactly how we have to think about how government should consider rationalizing the expenditures part. And For the last and the most effective thing is effective implementation. That is very important. हम सोच लेते हैं, हम प्लान बना लेते हैं, हम एग्री कर जाते हैं, हम कहते हैं कि हम रिफॉर्म करेंगे, दुरुस्तगी करेंगे, चीज़ें करेंगे, बट इम्प्लीमेंटेशन नहीं होती है चीज़ों की, एग्जीक्यूशन नहीं होती है उस तरह चीज़ों की. सो वी रियली हैव टू थिंक अबाउट कि एग्जीक्यूशन कैसे होगी, इंस्टीट्यूशंस कैसे स्ट्रेंथन होंगे, गवर्नेंस कैसे बेहतर होगी. इट्स वेरी इजी टू से कि गवर्नेंस को बेहतर कर लें. आई एग्री, एवरी वन ऑफ यू मस्ट एग्री, बट हाउ? So how is something like we should talk about. So this is the agenda of the World Bank. If you will search your Google website and you just write this word, reform for a brighter future, time to decide, it will take you to the World Bank page where you will find all the policy notes, all the videos and documentaries available on all these issues available, and we are adding more value to it with your cooperation, with your engagement, with your input in that. So I would request all of you to stay with us until it ends. It's going to be an exciting event today, like we had it before. I'm going to show you very quick documentaries like what we did before, and you will see कि आज का दिन भी हम कितना productive जो है वो बनाने वाले हैं. So let me take you to कि इससे पहले क्या हो चुका है. Before coming here, we've been to all the provinces at the provincial capitals, जिसमें कोयटा है, कराची है, लाहौर आए थे हम यहाँ पे, and we've been to Peshawar, and we have conducted 4 roundtable discussion with experts. So there were like more than 400 experts on this specific agenda, and on 6 themes, and we had this multiple engagements with them. With the help of them, we have initially developed a policy note, and then we refined those policy notes, and then after this drive, we are actually going to convert these policy notes into a comprehensive document, which we will, the World Bank and PIDE will present to the next incoming government. Like these are the policy areas, and these are the solutions, and these are the suggestions, and how you are going to actually accomplish things. So after the roundtable discussions, we've been to like 21 universities across Pakistan. We have conducted 40 focus group discussions with the youth. Youth to us matters. आप सब मैटर करते हैं, आपकी वॉइसेस मैटर करती हैं, आपकी कंट्रीब्यूशन मैटर करती है. ये मुल्क, इसका मुस्तकबिल आपके साथ जुड़ा है, इसलिए आप मैटर करते हैं. That is why we have decided to engage with the youth directly. We usually engage with the experts every now and then, but engagement with the youth is of our prime objective, to hear you, to listen to you, to capture your voices कि आप क्या सोचते हैं, आप क्या कहते हैं, आपका क्या opinion है. So this is like we are going to do this again today with all of you today in 3 sessions which we will have. So in these group discussions, our teams went to like different areas, जिसमें गवादर भी है, जिसमें खुजदार भी है, कराची है, सखर है, पेशावर है, मालाकंड है, like every far flank, कोयटा है. You think about, we tried to actually capture few voices, although we cannot say it's a representative sample, but it's quite a comprehensive sample of more than 500 young students from universities who gave us their voices. So I'm going to like quickly show you 2 documentaries. First would be about the focus group discussions जो कि हमने conduct की. जी please. Thank you. Second भी लगाते हैं दूसरी जो है. So this is the national conversation which we had at the national level after we had these focus group discussions and roundtable. So national conversation. Thank you so much. So this is basically the engagement. We believe in engagement. We believe in collective thought process. We believe in collective action. And this is basically because of you कि हम मिल के ये सारी बात करें और जो साहिब इक़्तिदार लोग हैं उन तक हम ये बातें पहुंचाएं कि हमें क्या चाहिए, ना कि आपको हमारे लिए क्या चाहिए, हम आपको बताएंगे कि हमें क्या चाहिए आपसे. So let me take you to the program of the day. After my presentation, we are going to have like 3 discussion sessions today. One session would be on Pakistan human capital crisis, and then we will have a discussion on addressing macro fiscal challenges. Third discussion would be on unleashing the productive economy, and then we have a simulation, the concluding session in which Tobias will conclude everything, and then we will have a closing address by your worthy Vice Chancellor here. So Tahmina, should you come over and please start the first session? Thank you, Ji.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum. I am Tahmina Asad. I am Research Fellow at PIDE. So after an insightful presentation by Dr. Fahim, we'll now move to the first discussion session, which is on Pakistan's human capital crisis. For this, we have Ms. Asifa, who is Senior Education Specialist at the World Bank Group, and she will be presenting the session, and Ms. Dr. Saima Server from DC University will be moderating the session. So over to Ms. Asifa.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Asifa. I'm a senior education specialist with the World Bank. It's always a pleasure to be back in Lahore. I lived in Lahore for about 4 years while I worked for an education project with the government of Punjab. And it's one of my favorite cities. So thank you so much for hosting us here. It's also really, really heartening to see so many smart young women in this beautiful campus, really, really proud of all the young women who, despite whatever constraints they have, they succeed in enrolling in college. And I saw the various departments in your college, so mashallah, so you're very fortunate to be in a beautiful campus. And I wish you all the best with your career aspirations after you graduate. And the topic that we are focusing on today is learning outcomes. And my presentation will focus on primary education for now, because evidence shows that a strong primary base is critical for any future learning. So what you'll see here today is the challenges that our boys and girls across the country face when it comes to enrolling in school, and when they're enrolled in school, acquiring a basic education, and the recommendations that we have provided for now to improve access and quality to education. So if I could please ask you to go to the first slide, please. So the challenge. There's a term called learning poverty. Learning poverty refers to the proportion of children in any country that are unable to read and understand an age-appropriate text by the age of 10 years old. And in Pakistan, the figure for learning poverty right now is 78%. That's a very high number. So at this point in time, 78% of 10-year-old boys and girls across the country are unable to read and understand a text that is appropriate for their age. So they may be able to read, they may be able to understand, but text that is for younger children. This number has gone up from 75% pre-COVID and pre-floods. So we know that floods had a major impact on schooling, and COVID also did. Schools were shut down on and off for about 18 months. Lots of children dropped out during COVID as well, and then we also see the children dropped out during the floods as well. So this is the term. This includes children who are enrolled in school and cannot read, and also includes children who are out of school. At this point in time, I mean, various sources have various figures, but the figure that we use for out-of-school children is 20 million. So at this point in time, there's 20 million children across the country who are out of school. And as you can see, Pakistan is at 78%. This figure is much higher than your average figure for a lower middle-income country and for the South Asia region. So Pakistan is performing poorly compared to even our neighbors in South Asia. So as I said earlier, so learning poverty is a combination of two factors. One is children who are in school but are unable to read and understand basic text. And here you see that in Pakistan, 70% of the young boys and girls who go to school are unable to read and understand basic text. And then you have 27% of your children who are not even enrolled in school. So these two concepts are called learning deprivation, so when you're in school but unable to read and understand, and schooling deprivation, which is you don't even have access to school. And as you can see, again, when it comes to schooling deprivation, Pakistan has a much higher proportion of children than for South Asia and for your average lower middle income country. So we've addressed the term learning poverty, we've addressed learning deprivation, and we've addressed schooling deprivation. There's another term that we use, it's called human capital. Human capital is our ability to be, when a child is born and survives the early years, receives the right kind of health care, nutrition, education, that is cumulatively called our human capital. And in Pakistan, at this time, only 41% of the boys and girls are actually achieving their human capital. That means 59% of our boys and girls, especially in Sindh, in Balochistan. The human capital index for Sindh is 32%. The human capital index for Balochistan is 36%. Again, this is far lower than the South Asia average of 48% and is close to the sub-Saharan African average of 40%. And I'll give you an even more startling figure. A girl born in Pakistan today is only 8% of the girls born in Pakistan today are able to utilize their human capital. That means people like us who were born healthy, who received the right kind of nutrition, health care, who were able to go to school, graduate from school, and use their education to leverage a job. So only 8% of the girls in Pakistan today are actualizing their human capital potential. And just think of, the lost economic opportunity as well. We know that when a woman is educated, she's a better mother, she can contribute more meaningfully to society. We know that she can avail the opportunities that are accessible to her. So only 8%. So, I mean, that's a very startling figure. And another term called the learning adjusted years of schooling, again shocking for Pakistan, is that when a child graduates, even from the 10th grade, the learning that they have acquired is only worth 5.1 years. So children who enroll into school at age 5, graduate at age 15, the kind of education they get, especially in our rural public schools, only equals to 5.1 years of schooling. This shows our net enrollment ratio. So there's two figures that we use when we calculate children in school. So there's gross enrollment ratio, which is all children in school as a numerator and all children in the country as a denominator. But net enrollment ratio actually looks at age-appropriate enrollment. So it looks at children who are in primary school as a numerator over children who should be in primary school according to their age. Again, over here you see that Pakistan performs worse than all low-income countries and worse than our neighbors in South Asia. Our NER is at 73%. It has been rising, but it hasn't been rising enough, mostly because children start school late and therefore are unable to catch up. So these are the challenges. I presented some of the challenges, and now we'll go to recommendations. So we've broken our recommendation into immediate priorities, challenges that we can address within 1 year, and then 5-year priorities that will require slightly more sustained effort. But before I get into this, the challenge of education is not something that can be resolved with intermittent 1-year, 5-year approaches. It requires concerted long-term effort that isn't limited to one political cycle, that isn't limited to 5 to 10 years. We see countries like Sri Lanka, I mean, they've achieved their enrollment levels because of 30, 40 years of sustained effort. And now they're able to reduce their investments into education because they've built the right building blocks needed for children to come to school, learn well, and graduate. So the first, of course, is making sure that you bring all your children to school, especially girls. We saw that out of the 20 million children that we've calculated as out of school, 12 million are girls, and only 8 million are boys. That's a big number, but 12 million are girls. So we really, really need to focus on bringing girls to school. And what are the challenges that girls face when coming to school? They don't have easy access to school. Even when schools are close by, the distance from their home to school is overwhelming. There's no reliable public transportation. And think of a child who's in Kohistan or Chitral. Even a 1-kilometer walk is because of the topography, because of severe climate. So these are some of the challenges that we need to think about. So make sure that schools are available. Make sure that the girls have the resources needed to go to school. So governments like Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa introduced conditional cash transfers. So that's a stipend that goes to families every month if their children are enrolled in school, and this is for middle school, and they attend regularly. And those cash transfers are actually used by families to arrange for transportation for the girls to come to school. And that conditional cash transfers, not for learning, but for enrollment. We've seen evidence around the world shows that conditional cash transfers actually work in bringing girls to school and making sure that they attend regularly. Second is public-private partnerships. And Punjab is one province that has done immensely well when it comes to public-private partnerships. So in areas where government schools don't exist, the government funds low-fee private schools that enroll out-of-school children and provide them an education for free. And it's not easy to construct a public school. So in the absence of existing infrastructure, we promote public-private partnerships. And evidence from across the globe has also shown that enrollment campaigns that talk about the benefits of education, they talk about the benefits of especially bringing girls to school, they talk about the benefits of sustaining your children in school have worked. And we've seen that again, the government of Punjab rolls out very successful enrollment campaigns, and we've seen that in South Punjab, those campaigns have been successful in increasing enrollment numbers, especially in underperforming districts like Muzaffargarh, Laya, Rahim Yar Khan, etc. And then, the other innovative approaches as well. For instance, non-formal education, accelerated learning programs. And again, Punjab is a province that fares better than other provinces when it comes to these innovations. And, we spoke about learning poverty. And, while primary schooling, middle schooling, high schooling, you have a variety of subjects. But again, evidence shows that unless you know how to read and read well, you will not be able to learn any other subject, right? So basic reading and comprehension is the foundation for all learning. So our focus is on reading, reading, reading. And what we have promoted is introducing a daily reading lesson in all our schools, from primary, first grade to the 5th grade. Just make sure that your children know how to read well and understand what they're reading. That will help them in Islamiyat, science, geography, history, social studies, right? So that is one of our major focuses. And when you introduce a reading lesson, your teacher should understand what are the key components needed to read well. They should have the right kind of resources, textbooks that students enjoy reading, that stimulate an interest in reading. And then see how well your children are actually able to read. Have some kind of assessments. So, we're all used to examinations, right? I mean, they scare us all the time. But there's a term called assessments, which actually are low stakes. So when I take an assessment, there's no impact on whether I get promoted or I get admission into another school. An assessment is like an examination, but it's a pulse check of how a particular student group is learning. And results from those assessments then go back and feed into policy development, teacher development, textbook development. So what we are saying is that assessments should be a regular feature of these reading lessons. Another stark reality in Pakistan is that almost a third of our schools are multi-grade. What does that mean? That means that if you take a primary school, you will have maybe 1 or 2 teachers who are teaching. You'll have one teacher who teaches grade 1, grade 2. You'll have one teacher who then teaches grade 3 to 5. Now, these teachers and multi-grade schools have been around since the beginning of Pakistan. In Sindh right now, 44% of schools are multi-grading. And, policies are always formed to eliminate multi-grading. But to eliminate multi-grading, you need 2 key investments. You need adequate numbers of teachers, you need adequate numbers of schools. And, given the funding that we have for education, that, we haven't been able to achieve that aspiration. So what we are saying is recognize, unfortunately, that multi-grade is a feature of all our public schools, and equip our teachers to teach in a multi-grading session. It's not an ideal scenario, but it's a scenario that we have to accept and we have to live with. And there's a lot of content out there that supports teachers to teach in multi-grade settings. And recent innovation, something called teaching at the right level, again, that's been practiced in Punjab with some success, claims that dividing students into their ability, their learning proficiency rather than their age may be a better way of making sure that all students learn. So for instance, we have, mashallah, about 1,000 girls in this room. Not all of the girls at the same age are able to read at the same level of proficiency. So what we promote is group students according to their ability to learn, even whether one is 6-year-old, another is 7, another is 5. And that is one of the ways that you can actually take advantage of the multi-grade setting. But unless your teachers know how to teach in a multi-grade setting, and unless they're given the right kind of resources to teach in a multi-grade setting, it's not going to be easy to do so. And what happens is children graduate from primary school, these multi-grade schools, again, not even knowing how to read at their age level. Finally, data. So I think we've all used data for our research, right? The basic fundamental of any good policy, any good intervention, is to leverage, first collect, analyze and then leverage the data that exists in our country to provide evidence of what works and what doesn't work. Now, all the provinces across Pakistan, Punjab, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Sindh, Balochistan, they have introduced really great innovative ways to collect data every month from school on whether teachers are coming, students are coming, what facilities exist, what are the levels of attendance. But that data needs to be used to provide targeted support, again, to particular student groups. So, all development partners in Pakistan, one big focus: collect data, make sure it's credible, make sure it's timely, and then use it for decision making, use it for policy development, use it to create advocacy for underserved population groups, use it for resource allocation, use it for targeted interventions, to make sure textbooks are coming to schools, to make sure teachers are coming to school, to make sure schools have all the resources they need: a classroom, a textbook, a functional toilet, electricity, water. And with data being collected from all schools, policymakers, resource managers should have an understanding of what schools need additional resources and how the lack of those resources is actually having an impact on enrollment and attendance. Finally, data on learning. Data on learning, again, assessments. We need to know how well our children are learning, and we need to know regularly so we can have remedial instruction. So to give you an example, after schools reopened following COVID-19, we didn't know what learning losses were across Pakistan because, we didn't have those targeted assessment systems in place to understand how what knowledge children had retained from when they left school pre-COVID. And so teachers, when children came back to school 18 months later, teachers just continued to teach where the kids had left off without taking into account the learning losses that happened. I mean, if you sit at home for 18 months, you're going to forget what you knew 18 months ago, right? So, again, assessments, very, very important to understand what children are learning, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and how you can improve them. So these are immediate recommendations. In the long term, teachers. Teachers are the most important element in our education. Again, a primary school teacher, they say a kindergarten teacher is the most important determinant of whether you'll stay in school, whether you learn well, and even, lifelong success. So we have to invest in recruiting the right teachers. All provinces have made an effort to make sure the teacher recruitment is based on merit, that teachers have the right kind of support they need, but you also need to make sure that the incentives are right for teachers. For instance, no teacher wants to be appointed to a rural school, right? Because they don't have accommodation that's safe, they don't have access, they don't know how to get from their homes to those schools. So just make sure that there's an alignment of incentives and opportunities for teachers. And make sure that there's also career development opportunities, right? Somebody who's hired as a teacher knows that if she performs well, she or he performs well, there is potential for growth. Provide teachers with the kind of support, targeted support that they need. Again, Punjab has done tremendously well here, where you have teacher trainers who go to a classroom, who observe how well a teacher is teaching, and they provide immediate feedback based on the context in which the teacher is teaching. And again, research shows that we have to teach our children in a language that they understand. Now, in Punjab, our mother tongue is Punjabi, our mother tongue is Saraiki. Why are we teaching our children in Urdu? Teachers have difficulty teaching in Urdu, which is a second language to most of us. So, we are advocating that children should be taught in a language that is spoken at home, that they understand, and that they retain. Punjab, again, has recently innovated that in all its public schools, when a new teacher is hired, there will be a teacher who teaches in Punjabi and a teacher who teaches in Saraiki. So that's a first step once again. In Sindh, for instance, in all the Sindhi-speaking districts, students are studying in Sindhi. And again, if you compare the schools that teach in Sindhi versus the schools that speak in Urdu, you see a difference in the way students perform. Early childhood education. So the first 5 years of a child's life are the most important because our brain is a sponge. So from birth to 5, our brain grows at a speed that will never be possible, when the child, after 5 years old. So, but we don't enroll our children into school till after 5, right? So there's a major, major opportunity that's missed out. So early childhood education programs start by age 3. And governments have introduced those programs. We advocate making sure that while children enroll in early, first there should be incentives, right? There should be knowledge sharing, knowledge dissemination to help parents understand that sending your child to school starting at age 3 has major lifelong benefits. And then making sure that when they do come to school at that age, they're provided the right kind of stimulus, the right kind of learning resources, the right kind of teachers, the right kind of quality instruction to make sure that these young boys and girls coming to school are actually being provided the right kind of stimulus for brain development and for a strong foundation for lifelong learning. Finally, none of this can happen without the right kind of budgets, right? So right now, Pakistan, I'll show you a graph in the next slide, spends, again, much less than its neighboring countries when it comes to its education budget. It's only at 2.4% of GDP, whereas to achieve our enrollment and quality objectives, at a minimum, it needs to be at 5.4%. So, we advocate increasing the education budget, making sure that budgets are used effectively, that they're released on time, and that when schools and teachers spend the education budgets, they're not worried about scary checks and balances that demotivate them from spending effectively according to school needs. And this is the figure that I was talking to you about, right? So if you look at Pakistan, again, Pakistan spends even lower than your average lower income country. Bangladesh spends less than Pakistan right now, but Bangladesh has made tremendous investments in education in the past, which we unfortunately in Pakistan have not done. Again, we need to go from 2.4 to 5.4% to achieve bare minimum requirements. As I said earlier, we need to make sure that prioritizing education is the mandate of every political party, of every government that comes in, is cross-sectoral, alignment with development partners, civil society organizations, academics, students like yourself, and the government, of course. And then, there's so much global evidence of what works and what doesn't work. There's so much evidence in Pakistan of what works and what doesn't work. We need to collect data. We need to analyze that data. We need to build our policies and our practices based on evidence. So I think you've heard more than enough from me. That's it for my presentation. Thank you.
Such an insightful presentation. Thank you, Ms. Hajra. So now I welcome Dr. Saima Server on stage for moderating the session. And here I think youth involvement will be more necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Tahmina. Hello, everyone. A very warm good morning to all of you. I myself is Dr. Saima Server. I'm here not to give you a detailed presentation, which Isa has given here, a very detailed and very informative and insightful for all of us. No doubt we know that you are here for your tertiary education, not your primary education, but these are the, as she has mentioned, it's the foundation we are missing for meeting our educational targets in our country. So that's why it's very important to engage yourself into this discussion. So my purpose to be here is to involve yourself here, to take your feedback that how you have been facing obstacles or challenges for completing your education, for achieving that target which you wanted to do for your future aspirations. यहाँ मैं आपको बताती चलूँ कि आप questions कर सकते हैं, but I would like to take your comments first of all. If you have some question, then we will forward it to Ms. Iza so that she can justify with the proper answer to yourself for gaining your knowledge. You can raise your hand, but try to be very crisp in your comment, and it should be very precise as well. As you raise your hand, you will be provided the mic, and you can give us your feedback that being a woman, which kind of challenges you have been facing for completing your education, and what kind of measures or remedies you want for us to move forward the government for the implementation of a new policy. Here I would like to agree with Ms. Iza that she highlighted the political cycles concept. It's very interesting. Unfortunately, we are not incremental in our approach. There is a break in the policy implementation. Policy content is there, but somehow policy consistency is not there. So you can follow these kind of things in your mind, that how do you find yourself to be a victim of these kind of issues being a woman. So over to you, if you have some comment or some your feedback over this, you can raise your hand.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Savera. I am from psychology department. I guess the main issue in our country is that educational institutes are considered to be a road to salary, to a good salary. A nice degree, a good salary. A lower degree, a lower salary. So basically for this purpose, women are considered to be future housewives. And for this reason, they think that it's not important for a woman to get education. So first we have to change the mindset maybe of the people, so may they get interested. Thank you.
Okay, you mean to say it's not about the accessibility or affordability of the education, rather it's the socio-cultural setup of our society which is becoming a more important hurdle during this journey. Yes. Any other opinion from your side, girls? It's a very good and encouraging crowd here. It's a wonderful crowd here, having so many women and to be among them. So I think you are not having any issue, and this has been very smooth journey for you people. So it means we are not facing any kind of educational problems in our country. Yes, please.
Mahabisharat here.
Ji.
I think the government should make Urdu the official language because it is more linked to other languages rather than English, so that the students can easily understand Urdu and complete their education. So please try to make the Urdu official language.
So it means mother language is going to increase the learning outcome. Okay, fine. Ms. Iza is also agreeing with this. Any other feedback from your side?
Assalamu alaikum. I think the biggest issue we are facing right now is a safer environment and emotional, because there are many students who are not safe in their own institutes. They face this very major issue, which is why they skip their institutions. And this is a very big issue because we are not feel safe.
So it's about safety issue,
Yes,
you're
ma'am.
saying. Again,
Yes.
a socio-cultural element. Right.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। मैं यूथ की डेफिनेशन में तो नहीं आती, लेकिन कुछ ऐसे पॉइंट्स हैं जो कि पॉइंट आउट करना चाहूँगी कि बीइंग अ मैरिड वुमन एजुकेशन को कंटिन्यू करने में यंग लड़कियां स्पेशली बहुत से चैलेंजेस को फेस करती हैं, जिसमें उनको इमोशनल जो है बैकअप की भी ज़रूरत पड़ती है, सपोर्ट की भी ज़रूरत पड़ती है। तो दे शुड बी स्पेशल सम काइंड ऑफ सपोर्ट जिसमें कि फैमिली से रिलेटेड इमोशनल सपोर्ट जो कि उनकी मेंटल वेलबींग को और एजुकेशन में उनकी परफॉर्मेंस को उसी तरीके से जारी रख सकें जैसे कि वो उससे पहले अपनी तमाम कमिटमेंट्स के साथ उसको जारी रखती हैं। तो कुछ इन चीज़ों के ऊपर स्पेशली फॉर यंग वुमेन आई थिंक कि हमारे मुल्क में बहुत कमी है और बहुत कुछ करने की गुंजाइश है ताकि उनको हर तरह की सपोर्ट अवेलेबल हो, रेडिली अवेलेबल हो और वो उसको करते हुए अपनी एजुकेशनल जर्नी को अच्छे से चला सकें। सो आई हैव सीन मैनी स्टूडेंट्स जो कि अपनी मैरिज के बाद एजुकेशन में बहुत डिफ़िकल्टी फेस करती हैं बिकॉज उनके होराइजन्स बहुत ज़्यादा बढ़ जाते हैं जिन पे उन्होंने फ़ाइट करनी है। सो दिस इज़ समथिंग दैट आई वांट टू हाईलाइट।
Girls, just raise your hand. I have one question from you. How will you define women empowerment? There are so many precise definitions. So do you think your education is empowering you mentally, emotionally or not? Are you able to take your own decisions? No, no is also here. Just raise your hand, one student who is saying no. Why is this so?
बेसिकली आई थिंक कि डिपेंड करता है। बेसिकली मैं एक बहुत ज़्यादा स्पोर्टिव फैमिली से बिलोंग करती हूँ, लेकिन अगर नो की बात की जाए तो मुझे ये लगता है कि जो हमारा इन्वायरमेंट है, हमारा सोसाइटी माइंडसेट है, वो हमारे डिसीजंस हमें लेने नहीं देता। एक हमारे लिए मशरकी लड़की होना एक बहुत समझा जाता है शर्म हया वाली, और हमें इसी जंजीर में बांध के अपने फैसले लेने से रोका जाता है। तो यही सबसे बड़ी वजह है कि हम अपने डिसीजंस खुद नहीं ले पाते।
Okay, fine. So, any one of you can highlight just one single solution how to combat this kind of mentality from your society to empower yourself both mentally and emotionally. Just a single solution, whether your educational system is supporting you for achieving that target or not. This must be the objective in your mind when you are going to take your classes, when you are going to complete your degree. If you are not able to achieve this objective, it means there is some missing link which is need to be covered. Just a single remedy you want to give us for meeting this target of empowering yourself.
Assalamu alaikum.
Who is there? Yes, please.
मैम, मेरे ख्याल में हमारे यहाँ पर ना मोस्टली ये कहा जाता है कि अगर एक लड़की पढ़ रही है तो शादी वगैरह उसके लिए हर्डल है, कि बहुत सारी जो लड़कियाँ हैं वो शादी के बाद जो है अपनी स्टडीज़ नहीं कंटिन्यू करती, कि घर देखना है, बच्चे देखने हैं। लेकिन अगर हमारे एजुकेशनल इंस्टीट्यूशंस में शुरू ही से एक ऐसी जो है डेवलपमेंट की जाए कि एक बच्ची जो है शादी के लिए भी तैयार हो और उसे पता हो कि मैंने अपने एक एम को लेके चलना है, तो ये काफ़ी बेहतर हो जाएगा, क्योंकि शादी तो एक फेज ऑफ लाइफ है।
But this is from your side. This is not something which is to be inculcated in the minds of the other people. It's you who is going to give your voice to others, who is going to tell your emotions, your motive to others that you are going to intend this, you are having this intention after the completion of your degree. This is something which is, I meant to get the empowerment after your educational system. So this is very important, and this is on your behalf. Any other comment about these strategies we are following in this educational system and which is helping you to come out of the empowerment trap?
I'm from BBA department. My name is Amna. I think awareness is the most important thing. Many of people think that awareness of women is not important because they just have to conclude that they just have to be a housewife. But I guess educated women can educate their child much better than an illiterate or uneducated woman. So they empower their own child, they can empower the whole country, they can work for economy, they can work for the whole prosperity of the country. So the awareness should be one of the most topic that we should conclude about it, because awareness is not in much highlight points. We should aware people that how much education is important for a woman and how she can give power to a country. That's what every woman is doing in this world.
Awareness is the most important ingredient for a successful educational system. Very nice. Yes, please go ahead.
I hope you can see me. My name is Faika Abid. मैम मुझे लगता है कि हम लड़कियों ने ना अपने ऊपर फ्रेजाइल स्टिकर लगाया हुआ है कि जो नाजुक अशिया पे लगाते हैं कि हैंडल विद केयर, हमने खुद अपने ऊपर लगाया हुआ है. हमें अल्लाह ताला ने इतना नाजुक नहीं बनाया था जितना हमने अपने आप को खुद बना लिया है. हमें ज़रा सी डांट दिया तो हम इमोशनल हो जाते हैं, वीक हो जाते हैं. तो मुझे लगता है कि ये जो जायज़ स्टिकर हमने अपने ऊपर लगाया हुआ है ना, ये हमें उतारना चाहिए और ख़ुद अपने आप को पहले स्ट्रॉन्ग समझना चाहिए ताकि हमें बाकी लोग भी स्ट्रॉन्ग समझें.
So basically, this is the spirit which is lacking in our society. It's not somehow we are having resources. We need to increase our adaptive capacities. And for this, we have to have more skills as well as knowledge. Where do you find yourself in case of gaining skills with education? Do you think this is also mandatory when you are going through this process of tertiary education and this is somewhere missing during this process? I would also like to listen you on this so that we can improve our strategies to move forward. What about the skills gaining?
Assalamu alaikum, ma'am. Hina Zari over here. So yes, we do need skills, but we can only attain it through proper education. If we don't get education, how can we attain proper skills for it? So for women empowerment, so we can make our own choices, we need proper education. And through proper education, we can have opportunities for it.
So far, I have not seen a single comment which is showing me the thrill from your side. Being a woman, I have heard like this that you are very fragile, you are unable to take your decision by your own self, even getting the knowledge at university level. Why is this so? Why you are feeling like this? Do you think the system is not supportive? In which way? We want you to listen. We want to listen, you people, so that we could incorporate those kind of suggestions into our new policy directions. You should be very vocal in your voice.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Myself Noorlan. I'm from CS department. I have to share my 2 points of view. First, that it is not only important to get proper education, it is also important to apply this education in our practical life.
True.
90% of women in Pakistan only get education and not use in daily life. पाकिस्तान में आधी से ज़्यादा कम्युनिटी वुमेंस की है, तो फिर इन वुमेंस को पाकिस्तान की तरक्की के लिए भी काम करना चाहिए. हमें सिर्फ एजुकेशन हासिल नहीं करनी, उसको अप्लाई भी करना है अपनी डेली लाइफ में. और जो दूसरी बात की थी कि हम इंडिपेंडेंट नहीं हैं.
But let me stop you here. What are the obstacles you are facing in the application of your education? This is more important because as you complete your degree, you will be in the market. And on the other side, we are following the World Bank agenda of decent work. We want to formalize the economy. We want you people to get engaged yourself into job sector. If you are unable to find a job after completing your degree, then I want to listen, we all want to listen that what are the obstacles you are facing. Either these are emotional obstacles, issues, your socio-cultural issues, or something missing in your educational system which is not letting you to penetrate into the economic system. What is the most important issue?
सबसे ज़्यादा मसला ये है कि औरतें खुद अपने लिए आवाज़ नहीं उठाती. वो खुद ही एजुकेशन हासिल करने के बाद घर बैठ जाती हैं, वो खुद बाहर नहीं निकलती.
Okay, fine.
उनको अपने लिए खुद आवाज़ उठानी चाहिए, अपने लिए जॉब हासिल करनी चाहिए उनको सबसे पहले खुद को इंडिपेंडेंट करना चाहिए ताकि वो अपने फैसले खुद ले सकें.
Okay, fine, good. Any other comment?
Here, at the top. Yes. So my name is Musarat Fatma. So you have asked us why women are so fragile to take decisions. My answer to that is whenever we women raise our voices, we are either considered, disobedient in our family. We are stopped by us, and even if we are not having parents, we are not someone. If someone is supporting us, we have people around us. They ask us to, we have that social peer pressure. We are always, from the very class, we are afraid our teachers will make fun of us. Our friends will make fun of us of what we are speaking. So I believe this is something which is engaged, जो हम women हैं आपस में ही एक दूसरे के साथ एक दूसरे को रोक रही होती हैं. Everybody is like, even if I'm speaking, someone will be talking in my back and will be like this is not something good. And as a woman, I feel they feel very weak when they hear these comments.
Okay, fine. Again, you are discussing about the social norms which are not letting you to take your decisions by yourself and not helping you to empower yourself. This was very interesting discussion. As girls, you have contributed in a good way. This is very important. You are more than...
Assalamu alaikum.
I think...
Hi.
This is going to be the last one.
Okay, I'm Hijab. I want to say that system is encouraging nowadays. It's not about being independent. It's about taking the initial step. अगर आप initial step लेते हैं, then आपके साथ आपकी society, आपके parents, आपके साथ हर तरह की support होगी. So the thing that is most important, at least for me, is to take the initial step if you want to go forward.
Very nice. It's to take the initiative. This is something which I wanted to listen actually. Don't be fragile in your approach. It's not about your fragility. It's you yourself is making yourself fragile. You are the one who is going to take the initiative. No one is going to stop you. If you think there is some reluctance, you can negotiate because education is empowering you in some way that how can you go ahead while making the decision. So it was very wonderful interaction with all of you. We must keep this thing in mind that human capital is the only solution for achieving sustainable development goals given by the World Bank for the development of developing countries. So we have to look upon this. It's not about the knowledge and skills. It's about many other sectors which are going to support these two factors like health, care management system. So this is something, this was something from my side. I hope that this is going to be a very wonderful event for yourself, for gaining much knowledge regarding those two important factors which are human resources are accumulating in itself since long. It's education and health which is going to them or shape them in the form of human capital. Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay, I guess you enjoyed the discussion. Initially, we decided to go for a tea break, but since we are running short on time, so we are moving to our next discussion. So there's no tea break. But I promise the next session is going to be even more interesting and exciting for all of you. So now the next session is on addressing macro fiscal challenges. And to present, I welcome Ms. Aroop to please come on stage.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you to Lahore College for Women's University for hosting us and to PIDE for organizing this event. It's a pleasure to be here. So this session on addressing macro fiscal challenges, we will talk more about the issue of fiscal sustainability in Pakistan. The fact that our revenues consistently fall short of expenditures something that Fahim in his opening remarks also touched upon, and an issue that also links to all of the broader macroeconomic challenges that we are all facing in our life today, the high inflation and all the other macroeconomic issues that you hear about. And also it links to Iza's presentation where she talked about how the government is consistently spending less on education and needs to spend more. So let me dive into the presentation. So So the question of why is fiscal sustainability important? I will talk about how it's impacting the broader macroeconomic challenges of Pakistan, how it's the underlying issue that's impacting everything else. So the fiscal deficit, which is basically the difference between your revenues and expenditure, it's been persistently large for Pakistan and it's growing. In fiscal year 23, which ended in June 2023, our fiscal deficit was 7.8% of GDP, just slightly lower than the fiscal deficit in last fiscal year, 2022, which was 7.9% of GDP. And over time, this fiscal deficit has been growing for Pakistan. If you look at the past decade, the average is around 6.2% of GDP, which, given our revenue situation and the fact that we haven't been able to increase our revenues, it's quite large for Pakistan. And if you do a comparison of post-2010 fiscal deficits and pre-2010 fiscal deficit, what we find is that after 2010, when the 18th constitutional amendment happened, the fiscal deficit is actually 50% larger than it was before. And of course, that then, the fact that we are not able to meet our expenditure, we can consistently borrow more because we need more funds to meet our expenditure, which I think you all hear about in the news, in the public discourse as well, that public debt for Pakistan is consistently increasing. The last fiscal year, we ended at public debt at around 82.3% of GDP. Our fiscal law, the federal government's fiscal law, states that public debt should be lowered to around 60% of GDP, but we are nowhere close to achieving that. And why is this a big problem for Pakistan? We've seen that in years when our fiscal deficit was very high, our current account deficit, which is basically your difference, what you hear in your imports and exports, the fact that our imports are very high, but exports are not as high. The trade deficit is a huge component of your current account deficit. So in years when our fiscal deficit is very high, the chart on your left-hand side shows that, the current account deficit also tends to increase. So we're borrowing more from abroad. And what happens then is that your current account deficit reaches an unsustainable levels that government has to apply brakes. It applies contractionary fiscal and monetary policies. It pulls back on many policies that were started to promote growth. As a result, we have these short periods of high economic growth, 2-3 years, but then we reach these unsustainable levels, government applies contractionary policies, and as a result, the economic growth rate slows down. So we have these repeated, recurrent boom-bust cycles that you hear about, which is why our economy has not been able to grow at a sustained path over a long period of time as other countries have. And what happens then eventually, because government needs to meet its expenditures, and how are they doing that? They're consistently borrowing from commercial domestic banks. So our banking system is lending primarily to the government. Out of the total credit of the commercial banks, 73% is just to the government. So when 73% is to the government, lending to the private sector is very low. So that, of course, then impacts your private sector investment as well. These two charts show the level of private investment in Pakistan in comparison to many other countries,
what you see on this chart is that credit to the private sector as a percentage of GDP, you can see in Pakistan is around 17%, which is lower than most other countries except for Nigeria. Similarly, if you look at private investment as a percentage of GDP, again, Pakistan is ranks much lower than all of the other countries. So what are the key drivers? What's causing this situation? Why is Pakistan's fiscal deficit so high? Why is this a problem? So look, there are two sides of the equation, right? There's revenue and then there's expenditure. If you look at the revenue, again, this right-hand side shows you a total revenue, and it's breakdown by what's collected by the federal government, what's collected by the provincial government, and the other chart shows you tax revenue, and again, what's proportion of that is collected by the federal government and what's by the provincial government. So our tax revenue as a percentage of GDP last fiscal year was 10.2%. What is the South Asia region average? It is about 14.6% of GDP. So you can see that our tax revenue is much lower than our peer countries in South Asia region. And what else does this chart show you? Is that tax revenue is primarily, and total revenue is primarily collected by the federal government. The contribution in it by the provinces is very low. Provincial governments have increased revenue over time, but it's still less than 1% of GDP, and out of the total revenue share, it's only less than 10% of GDP. So what we find is that revenue collection in itself is quite low, and then it is done primarily by the federal government, which in itself relies on indirect taxes, sales tax, customs duties, all of these taxes, withholding taxes to collect its revenue. Then you come to the other side of the equation, the expenditure. What's happening at the spending side of the equation? So if you look at the spending side, Pakistan's spending, perhaps, if you compare it to other countries, is not that high. But the problem is that it's extremely rigid. So why do I say rigid? Because it's in areas that is not impacting productivity growth. It's not impacting, as Isa was mentioning, it's not improving human capital outcomes. It's in areas which is not supporting economic growth. So it is low quality and it is rigid. It may not be too high. So, and the other problem is, again, like this chart would also show you that current expenditure, which is your interest payments, your pensions, salaries, all of these expenses, operating expenses, you look at major chunk of it is federal and provincial current expenditure. Very little is left behind for then development expenditure, which can help achieve broader development goals of the country that we set out in all of these visions and long-term programs. And similarly, this chart on the right side shows you a breakdown of federal spending. In that, again, you can see most of it is going out in interest payments. A huge proportion of our spending is just allocated to interest payments. And then you have other salaries, pensions, and other benefits, grants and subsidies. So the current expenditure, the recurrent expenditure that is not supporting economic growth, that is where most of our government spending is going. So what are the policy options that we can utilize to restore fiscal sustainability? And again, over here, looking at those buckets of revenue and expenditure, we will package our policy recommendations. So 3 key areas if we can position this. First, increase domestic tax revenue collection. Like we said in the start, it's continuously low. And then rationalize your expenditures. So by rationalizing, we need to reorient our expenditures. And then strengthen federal-provincial coordination and the institutional architecture which supports your revenue, your expenditures, all of that. We'll go deep dive into all of these areas. So coming towards the revenue side, I think the key theme that we are pushing through our policy notes, Government of Pakistan has consistently tried to extract more revenues from the existing taxpayer. And that is not helping anymore. That is not a sustainable tax revenue strategy. What we need is we need to broaden the tax base. And there are some startling numbers that we have here. Of the approximately, this is a survey calculated number, that if in Pakistan approximately 114 million people employed, there are just under 8 million people out of that 114 million people that pay personal income taxes. And then in some large provinces, there are almost 90% of farmers that are untaxed. So their agricultural income is untaxed. So when you look at the tax base of Pakistan, it's quite small, and we are continuously trying to extract more revenue from the same tax base. The key strategy here needs to be that we need to broaden the tax base, we need to address our challenge of informal economy, we need to improve documentation, and we need to bring out these many other undertaxed activities into the tax net. So under that overarching theme, some key areas that I want to touch upon. First is your tax exemptions and concessionary rates. If you look at the tax policy of Pakistan, within sales tax, income tax, all of these areas, there are many different exemptions and concessionary rates offered to different subgroups. And that collectively is adding a lot of loss to revenue. Pakistan government's own assessment is that tax expenditure led to around 2.6% of GDP in fiscal year 22. So that's closing those regressive exemptions, which are not improving economic growth in any way. That in itself can generate a lot of revenue, and that is much needed. Corporate tax exemptions are similar, where we need to close on the regressive tax exemptions. That in itself can generate some amount of revenue. So an earlier study done revealed that tax exemptions on non-exported products, they cost Pakistan 15% of its revenue potential. So there are also exemptions on even the products that we're not exporting, they're domestically consumed, and closing those exemptions can lead to a lot of revenue generation. Similarly, the personal income tax, for salaried and non-salaried individuals, the tax rates are different. What that means is that then there are all these issues around disclosing your income, how much of it you're disclosing as income generated from which source, and how is it that taxed. We have a lot of challenge around compliance issues in Pakistan. So harmonizing these tax schedules, closing down these exemptions, all of this can close those loopholes that are in our system, which people capitalize on in order to avoid paying taxes. And then on the excise duty, a lot of it is collected from cigarettes. But in that design itself, we have different tax rate for different types of taxes. And again, that also creates a way to, that's also in a way, if we can close those gaps, we can generate more revenue. So these are different areas from where we can improve compliance, we can improve revenue generation in our existing tax policy. Just by closing these exemptions, these preferential rates, these concessionary rates, we can generate a lot of revenue. And this is something that can be done in the short term. This is does not need to be a medium and long-term agenda. It's something that can generate revenue in the short term. And then on that side, I want to focus on some undertaxed activities. Retailers, on retailers, there's an interesting number that only about 178,000 entities are registered for GST, retailers. And we estimate that there are about 1.4 million retailers in Pakistan. And what's the share? That is only 178,000. So you can see that there's a huge segment of retailers that are avoiding taxes right now, and we can bring them into the tax net. Same goes for the agriculture sector, same goes for land taxation. In land taxation, property taxes are very low. They're not aligned to the market value of property. And also we tend to have really low taxes for vacant plots. So that in itself also encourages people to store their wealth in empty plots, not have any construction on it, and they're able to not pay a lot of taxes on it. So in the property taxes, and this is an area which is under provincial government, agriculture income tax is also an area which is under provincial governments. These are under-taxed activities in Pakistan, and a lot of revenue can be generated from these activities. Priorities for rationalizing expenditures. Again, coming to the other side of the equation. So what's happening at the expenditure time? We talked about how expenditures of Pakistan are not very high, but they're fixed and they're very rigid. They're concentrated in areas where we are not generating economic growth, for instance, interest payments and all of those areas. So first of all, reduce regressive subsidies. In Pakistan, subsidies, there are a lot of budget that's been allocated to subsidies, especially for federal government. Over time, there's been some effort to improve targeting of subsidies. For federal government, the biggest subsidy is the power sector, the electricity subsidies. And this chart on the right side, the upper chart, I want to just focus on the electricity subsidies and what its allocation is for different income groups, going from poorest to the richest, what it was in 2019, and then what it is now. So from 2019 to now, the government has taken some commendable steps in improving targeting of subsidies. You can see in 2019, electricity subsidies, a huge share of it was just going to the upper income classes. So we have the idea of subsidies is that they should be supporting the poor. So we need to improve the targeting of subsidies. At the moment, they're regressive and they're wasteful. So by improving targeting of subsidies, we can actually help the poor as well. But I would like to appreciate here some government steps that they have taken to improve targeting of this tariff differential subsidy in the power sector. And now it is the allocation is much better, but there's still more work that we can do in improving targeting of subsidies. Similarly, there are other areas as well in provincial governments as well, where they also recognize that subsidies are becoming an increasingly large burden for them, and they need to find ways to improve its targeting. And like at the moment currently for Pakistan, we're at such a critical stage and fiscal deficit is so high that in the short run, we really need to find areas, small gaps where we can address this challenge. And one way of doing that is to cut down on government operational and operational cost. And it's interesting that when we talk to provincial governments, they say that even in this time of crisis, government hiring has gone on as in record numbers. There's been no pause on it. There's been no rationalizing of it. So there are areas where we can take austerity measures. We should assess where we're doing hiring, where is it needed, where we can put a pause on our operational cost, because these continuous new hiring are then adding to our long-term pension expenditures as well. And pension is another area which increasingly all provincial governments, federal government, they recognize that it's becoming a huge liability for the country. And moving forward, they're really worried on how they're going to meet pension expenditures. So these are some areas where government can work on. And another important areas are the state-owned enterprises. There are a huge number of state-owned enterprises at the federal level and each of the provinces as well, and a huge share of government budget in the form of subsidies, grants, loans. It's all going towards supporting these subsidies, these loss-making subsidies actually, in terms of just supporting their budgets. So it's really time that we look into these loss-making SOEs. We should increase private participation on it. Government itself had a comprehensive exercise done to assess how they can move forward with these SOE agenda, but unfortunately a huge part of it has not been implemented. So this SOEs are also a huge fiscal drain for the country right now, and they're loss-making entities. So in sectors where there's no rationale for government intervention, we should look into private participation, and we should look for ways to divest those And finally, I want to come to this question about federal-provincial coordination. What happened with the 18th Constitutional Amendment and the 7th NFC award is that revenue is largely collected by the federal government. You can see in this chart that 90.8% of revenue is collected by the federal government and 9.2% only by the provincial governments. But the federal government only gets to retain about 46% of it. But at the same time, if you look at the other chart, federal government is responsible for 2/3 of your total country expenditures. So they don't get to keep the revenues that they need to support those expenditures. So it's time that we reassess how this 7th NFC award that decided how much of revenue should go to the provinces, how much should be the federal government. And because this structure has not incentivized provincial governments to increase revenue generation, at the same time, federal government continues to spend in areas where they need to withdraw from. So the federal government does not have the mandate to spend in many different areas, for instance, social protection, which is now a provincial subject. So this difference between federal and provincial finances is also adding to your consolidated fiscal deficit. Just to build on that argument again, this chart over here, it shows pre-2010 and post-2010 primary and fiscal deficit, and you can see the increase in it, what it was before the 18th Constitutional Amendment and what it is after. So 18th Constitutional Amendment was a good step. It was a good step in the right direction in empowering provinces, but it has to be a continuous agenda. We have forums like the Council of Common Interest, National Economic Council, where federal and provincial governments can come together to discuss many of these fiscal policy issues that impacts them both. And on fiscal policy issues, I want to also talk about this issue of tax policy, where different tax bases are with different governments. So, for instance, agriculture income taxes with provinces, but the rest of the direct income taxes are with federal government. So, GST, general sales tax on goods, is levied by the federal government, but on services, it's by the provincial government. And this is also an area where World Bank is working quite closely with federal and provincial government in trying to find ways to harmonize the tax bases, the tax administration system, so that we can close the loopholes, we can reduce incentives that are in the current system for tax avoidance, and we can move forward collectively. So I will stop here. I understand it from a fiscal perspective, it was a very heavy presentation, but welcome any kind of comments from you. I know that this issue impacts all of us in different ways. Connecting this back to Iza's presentation, where she talked about how low is the spending on education. Same goes for health, how low our spending on health is very low. But when you look at this situation of the Pakistan's public finances, you realize that the government just doesn't have the resources to spend on these areas. So we need to increase revenue. We need to increase revenue from areas that are undertaxed. We need to broaden our income tax base, and we need to rationalize our expenditures so that we can support economic growth, we can support increase in potential output and our productivity growth. So thank you very much. Thank you for listening to me, and I'll conclude here.
Thank you so much, Aroop. So now I welcome Dr. Fahim Jahangir to moderate the session. And again, your participation will matter a lot. Thank you.
Okay, मुझे लग रहा है यहाँ गप्पें ज़्यादा चल रही हैं. Obviously, economics is a boring subject. Okay, so let's make it less boring by capturing your views about it. Like economy हम सबको affect करती है, like all of us. Individual level के ऊपर भी, family, household level पे, community level पे, शहर के level पे, country के level पे. सो इफेक्ट्स ऑल ऑफ अस, जिस तरह भी आप इसको देखें उसमें. सो व्हाट वी वुड लाइक इज़ कि जो अभी अरूप ने आपको प्रेजेंटेशन दी है, इफ़ यू वुड लाइक टू कमेंट ऑन दैट, इफ़ यू वुड लाइक टू एक्सप्रेस योर व्यूज़ about the economy, specifically about the taxation matters, specifically about the spending matters. Government spend कहाँ कर रही है, taxes कहाँ से ले रही है, you know, and specifically about, I would like to hear from you is, keeping in mind there is a next Prime Minister coming in, there is a next Chief Minister Punjab is coming in, so what would you like him or her to do something जिससे चीज़ें बेहतर हों? So what is it? ठीक है, थोड़ा सा सुन लें, मुझे भी सुन लें, यहाँ पे बातें कम करें ताकि we can, you know, make this discussion more enriching. So okay, raise your hand now. Okay, first here. Mic please. Mic.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Darya Fatma and I'm from the economics department. You talked about increasing the tax base, which is great, but what will you do about public distrust? One of the reasons people don't pay taxes is because they don't trust the government. They have issues with regards to where their money is being spent. And how will you resolve the issue of public distrust?
Excellent. Very good question. There is a matter of public distrust. हमें एतबार नहीं है कि हम जो टैक्सेस दे रहे हैं वो कहाँ लग रहे हैं. How many of you think कि जो टैक्सेस कलेक्ट कर रही है गवर्नमेंट वो आप तक वापस आते हैं? Say it loud ताकि इस्लामाबाद तक जो जूम पे बैठ, अच्छा आप तक नहीं आते वो टैक्सेस. ओके, तो ये जो लाहौर के सारे मोटरवेज बन रही हैं, सड़कें बन रही हैं, अंडरपासेस बन रहे हैं, अस्पतालों में दवाइयाँ मिल रही हैं, अच्छा ओके, अच्छा उसमें आप में कुछ ऐसे भी हैं जो बिलीव करते हैं कि देयर आर टैक्सेस जो कि उन तक वापस आते हैं, लाइक एक्चुअली यस, नो वाले चुप कर जाएं, यस, ओके, सो देयर इज अ लिटिल यस देयर, ओके, एक्सीलेंट. ओके जी, नेक्स्ट कमेंट और क्वेश्चन जी प्लीज.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम, आई एम फ्रॉम इकोनॉमिक्स डिपार्टमेंट. सर मेरा एक सबसे बड़ा क्वेश्चन ये है कि हम हमेशा ये कहते हैं कि हमारा जो फिजिकल डेफिसिट है उसको इम्प्रूव करने के लिए हमें टैक्स बढ़ाने. हम ये देख नहीं रहे हैं कि हमारी इकॉनमी इस वक्त इस सिचुएशन में है कि लोगों के पास पैसे नहीं हैं टैक्स देने के लिए. हमारी इकॉनमी में जो मसला ये है कि हम डायरेक्ट टैक्सेस पे फोकस कम और इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस पे फोकस बहुत ज़्यादा करते हैं. और इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस हम आम लोगों से ही ले रहे हैं जिनके पास पैसा नहीं है देने के लिए, और डायरेक्ट टैक्सेस जो लोग दे रहे हैं वो करप्शन के थ्रू अपने टैक्सेस की छूट ले लेते हैं. रिजल्ट ये होता है कि जिन लोगों ने टैक्सेस देना है वो टैक्सेस दे नहीं रहे, और जिन लोगों से नहीं लेना चाहिए वो टैक्सेस दे रहे हैं. और हमारी बर्डन जो है वो आम लोगों पर ज़्यादा है टैक्सेस का, जिस वजह से वो अपनी मतलब बहुत ज़्यादा उनके लिए मुश्किलात क्रिएट हो गई हैं. दूसरी बात ये है कि हम अपने एक्सपेंडिचर को कम नहीं कर रहे. एक्सपेंडिचर में स्पेसिफिकली वो एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव एक्सपेंडिचर जो हम पे बर्डन है, हम लोग जो हैं ये जितने भी एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव हमारी कंट्रोल है गवर्नमेंट की, उनके जितने भी एक्सपेंडिचर हैं हम लोग मीट कर रहे हैं अपने टैक्सेस के थ्रू. वो क्यों कर रहे हैं? क्यों हम उनके बिल्स पे कर रहे हैं? क्यों हम उनकी जो है पेट्रोल की पेमेंट कर रहे हैं? ईच एंड एवरीथिंग हम ये क्यों पेमेंट कर रहे हैं उनकी अपने टैक्सेस के थ्रू? इसको क्यों नहीं कंट्रोल किया जा रहा? हम कहते हैं सब्सिडीज़ कम करें. सब्सिडीज़ जो हैं वो फार्मर को फैसिलिटेट कर रही हैं, वो डिफरेंट वे में लोगों को फैसिलिटेट कर रही हैं, लेकिन जो चीज़ें फैसिलिटेट नहीं करें हम उनको कम नहीं करें. हम कहते हैं पेंशन कम करें. पेंशन हम क्यों नहीं सदर की कम करते? क्यों नहीं हम इन लोगों की क्यों नहीं पेंशन हम रोकते? हम एक आम लोगों की क्यों पेंशन की तरफ ज़हन में आती है कि IMF जब भी हम पे लोन देता है वो मैं ये कहता है कि इस तरह करता कि डेवलपमेंट पर्पज़ के लिए इसको यूटिलाइज़ किया जाए. तो इस चीज़ पे भी थोड़ा ज़रा होना चाहिए कि जो लोन आए उसको डेवलपमेंट पर्पज़ के लिए यूटिलाइज़ किया जाए, क्योंकि ये उसकी अकाउंटेबिलिटी होना बहुत ज़्यादा ज़रूरी है कि जो लोन दिया जा रहा है उसको किस पर्पज़ के लिए यूटिलाइज़ किया जा रहा है. तो प्लीज़ इन चीज़ों पे ज़रा थोड़ा फोकस किया जाए, क्योंकि अगर हम लोग टैक्सेस को बढ़ाने की बात करते रहेंगे और अपने टैक्स स्ट्रक्चर को नहीं ठीक करेंगे, करप्शन वहाँ से ख़त्म नहीं करेंगे, और जो टैक्स स्ट्रक्चर है लोगों ने अगर टैक्स देना है तो उसको आप मतलब ईजी फॉर्म में नहीं करेंगे. अब आजकल देखिए ये जो हमने टैक्स रिटर्न देनी होती है उसके लिए भी बाकायदा कितनी टर्मिनोलॉजीज इतनी टेक्निकल हैं जिनको अंडरस्टैंड करना एक कॉमन पर्सन के लिए आसान नहीं है। वो बाकायदा पेमेंट देके उसको भी एंटर करवा रहे होते हैं। तो अब देखिए टैक्स स्ट्रक्चर ना तो हम आसान कर रहे हैं, ना उसके अंदर करप्शन ख़त्म कर रहे हैं। अगर इसी चीज़ को ख़त्म करें हमारा टैक्स कितना हद तक
पॉइंट वेल टेकन, थैंक यू सो मच।
Assalamu alaikum. I am Asifa Kamaal. I am from Labor and Human Resource Department. Actually, there is no question. I just want to comment on the situation. Actually, the problem is not with the generating of the revenue. Government has many ways to generate revenue. The issue is the spending of that revenue in a proper way. And I think until and unless our policymakers, our bureaucrats and our government will not take decisions, they will not get sincere with the country, they don't get such decisions that are important, that are beneficial for general public, it will continue to happen. And because we always give, as Ma'am Arup said, that we give subsidies to those people who are, I think, in a good position. My point of view is that if a hawker, if a peon of one scale in a government can pay his electricity bill, he can pay his gas bill, he can pay his telephone bill, then why a bureaucrat having so many facilities, having 2 lakh or more income can't pay this? So I think so our policy makers should take decision, because until and unless they are not sincere with the country, with the public, with everything, it will continue and we will get suffered. Thank you.
Okay, जी प्लीज। मैं आप लोगों की तरफ भी आ रहा हूँ अभी, ठीक है? तैयार हो जाएं। जी प्लीज।
Thank you so much. It was a nice presentation. Since it is from World Bank, so it needs a bit seriousness, and the issue is quite critical. My question is from Arub. Don't you think that we should seriously consider the national income accounts and the regional income accounts? Why don't we build on it? We don't have a proper regional income accounts. We haven't yet compiled input-output tables. Perhaps in 1981 or in 1982 there was a try, but we don't have that. We have to look into the proper supply chain, right from the field to the final place, and the value chain. So in order to have those the issue sorted of taxes compilation, we have to have proper accounts. Where do we need to tax? Whom do we need to tax? The second thing, perhaps it's a comment or a question, I don't know. It is regarding the breakup of expenditures. I don't know if we are allowed to talk about sensitive issues, the so-called sensitive issues in Pakistan. It would have been better if we have had the sectoral breakup of the expenditures. Kaisar Bengali, I have seen him in your previous sessions. He was presented there, and there is he has a great take on probably on non-combat expenditures. So I don't know how serious these events are. If it is going to be a problem solution approach towards Pakistan economy, so I recommend and I suggest to delve deep into the issues irrespective of its sensibilities. And thank you so much for giving me time and for having this.
Thank you. Okay, girls, वो एक हाथ खड़ा हुआ है यहाँ पे, ये पीछे Ali, आप कर लो उसके बाद फिर please.
Assalamu alaikum. A very good session. I learned a lot. I know a little about economy because I am the director of automotive engineering at UET Lahore. All the time I'm worried about how can we produce more automobiles, because as an engineer I believe if we can strengthen even one economy, even one sector, Pakistan can rise. Just to give you an example, Toyota produces a car in 35 seconds. Pakistan factory produces 30 cars in 1 month. So now coming to today's session, when the first talk happened, Isa gave an example of that we are spending 2.4% on education. So I quickly looked up how much are we spending on health. It came out to be 3%. And then I thought to myself, why can't we reprioritize whatever the money we have? So like the money, if we have 100 rupees in our hand, how can we prioritize on things that really matter, which can increase the human capital index? But while in the concluding remarks of Arup, when she walked away, she said that we just don't have the money to spend on them. So, but whatever the money we have, why can't we reprioritize? Because this reprioritizing on health, prioritizing on education will eventually lead to a more strong human capital, which will lead to growth of Pakistan. So why can't we just reprioritize the money we have? Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. यहाँ पीछे गर्ल्स की तरफ जाएं प्लीज जी, प्लीज क्विकली कर लें. ये नेक्स्ट माइक उनको दे दें. यहाँ पे दो माइक ही हैं. हबीब.
Thank you, sir. I am from Aurath Foundation. My name is Zubair Yusuf. I think the main issue which we'll never discuss in any economic forum is that in our countries the distribution of wealth is a very unequal. जिनके पास पैसा है उनके पास बहुत है और वो बहुत ज़्यादा पैसा बना भी रहे हैं, और जिनके पास नहीं है वो उनसे उनकी अपनी जो इनकम है वो भी खून की तरह के साथ जो है वो निचोड़ ली जाती है. तो जो इक्वल डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ वेल्थ है ये बेस है अपना किसी भी मुल्क की इकॉनमी को डेवलप करने के लिए. आप डेवलपमेंट कंट्रीज़ देख लें, नॉर्वे वगैरह या और दूसरे, तो उनमें ये चीज़ें जो हैं वो मौजूद हैं. और इसी को अगर हम कंसंट्रेट करें कि किसी तरह यहाँ पर एक इक्वल डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ वेल्थ जो है वो डेवलप हो सके तो शायद हम एक डेवलप कर सकें. दूसरी बात यह है कि हम बेशुमार क्राइसिस में जकड़े हुए हैं. इनमें से पॉलिटिकल क्राइसिस भी है, इनमें इकोनॉमिक क्राइसिस भी है, इनमें हमारे सोशल क्राइसिस भी हैं, जो हमें जो है एक डेवलपमेंट की तरफ या एक अच्छे और खुशहाल पाकिस्तान की तरफ ले जाने में जो है वो मतलब एक हर्डल्स हैं. तो इन चीज़ों को भी एड्रेस करना ज़रूरी है. वर्ल्ड बैंक ज़रूर टेक्निकली इन तमाम चीज़ों को जो है वो देखता है, लेकिन इनके जो सोशो पॉलिटिकल आस्पेक्ट हैं उनके ऊपर नज़र रखना भी बहुत ज़रूरी है. मैं मौके से फ़ायदा उठाते हुए पिछले सेशन जो हुआ है उसके ऊपर थोड़ी सी बात करना चाहूँगा कि हमारे मुल्क में 50% जो हैं वो औरतें मौजूद हैं. मतलब एक तकरीबन बराबर का मामलात हैं, लेकिन उनसे वो उस तरह का इक्वल जो है वो डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन मतलब एक रिसोर्सेज जो है वो मौजूद नहीं है. जो औरतें तालीम हासिल कर भी लेती हैं, अव्वल तो हमारे यहाँ प्राइमरी से लेकर 10 तक इतनी ज़्यादा रेशो है और लड़कियों के ड्रॉप आउट की कि वो अपना दुख होता है उसको देखते हुए. और उसकी वजह ये है कि हमारे स्कूल्स, हमारे एजुकेशन इंस्टीट्यूशन जो हैं वो करीब नहीं हैं उन कम्युनिटी के अंदर जहाँ पर एक्सेस हो सके औरतों की, बच्चियों की, कि वो आराम से जाके वहाँ पर अपना तालीम हासिल कर सकें. कोई उनको मतलब ट्रांसपोर्ट की फैसिलिटीज़ नहीं है. और दूसरा ये है कि जब वो अपना एजुकेशन मुकम्मल कर लेती हैं, चाहे वो प्रोफेशनल हो और दूसरी और हायर एजुकेशन हो, इवन देन दे आर इन अ डबल बर्डन. यानी उनको घर के काम भी करने पड़ते हैं और अपने प्रोफेशनल जिम्मेदारियां भी बढ़ानी पड़ती हैं. तो मेरी एक हम्बल रिक्वेस्ट ये है कि अवेयरनेस की ज़रूरत औरतों को नहीं है, अवेयरनेस की ज़रूरत मर्दों को है. और वो अवेयरनेस ये है कि अपना वो घर में उनके साथ जो उनके काम हैं, घरेलू काम, उनमें उनके साथ बराबरी की मदद करें, आराम से जाके घर में ना बैठें. बाकी बहुत शुक्रिया वर्ल्ड बैंक का कि वो हमें इस किस्म का डाटा देती है जो हमें आगे बढ़ने के लिए जो है फैक्ट्स एंड फिगर्स को मतलब में मदद रखती है। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
आपने तो मजमा ही लूट लिया। अच्छा, दैट इज़ द पावर इफ़ यू सी। आप कभी प्लीज़ बच्चों गो एंड लर्न कि जो वेस्ट के अंदर ख़वातीन को इज़्ज़त मिली है, बराबरी मिली है, उसके पीछे हिस्ट्री क्या है। वो मर्द ने उस औरत को इज़्ज़त नहीं दी है, वो उस औरत ने इज़्ज़त छीनी है, बनाई है अपनी। तो ये आप लोगों की पावर है जो कलेक्टिव आप मिल के अभी क्लैप कर रहे हो। अगर इस तरह ही कलेक्टिव रहोगे, साथ जुड़ के रहोगे, एक एजेंडे पे रहोगे तो फ़र्क पड़ेगा, अकेले अकेले नहीं पड़ेगा। अच्छा, इससे पहले कि मैं नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन लूँ, एक मैं आपसे एक और सवाल पूछने लगा हूँ। अभी रूप ने कहा है कि हमें तो और टैक्सेस चाहिए, तो एक सवाल मैंने पूछना है आपसे, मुझे येस और नो में उसका जवाब चाहिए। आप में से कितने लोग रेडी हैं ज़्यादा टैक्स देने के लिए? कमाल है, कोई भी ज़्यादा टैक्स नहीं देना चाहता तो मुल्क तरक्की कैसे करेगा? अरे हमें गवर्नमेंट को पैसे चाहिए, हम फिर कैसे अस्पताल बनाएंगे, स्कूल बनाएंगे, कॉलेज बनाएंगे, तनख्वाहें देंगे। We want more revenues, am I right? We want more revenues to generate, and so that we can spend back it to our people. So you think, okay, so once more, you say again that do you want to pay more taxes? Okay, point well taken जी। अरूप थोड़ा देख लेने, हाँ मैं आपको भी देता हूँ चांस दोबारा। ओके, सो देयर वाज अ क्वेश्चन फ्रॉम द गर्ल यहाँ पे। सर मैं आता हूँ आप पे, वो लड़कियों को ज़रा करने दें जी प्लीज़। आपका माइक नहीं चल रहा इसका, माइक ऑन करें इनका। ज़रा पीछे भी एक माइक लेके जाएं ज़रा किसी के पास, वहाँ से ही मुझे सुनना है किसी को।
Assalamualaikum. I am Hijab from FSC department. I am Hijab from physics department. And sir, here I am to enlighten the one point here that in our country, I see everything till now. I mean, I am like 17 and I have seen everything like made in another country. Every single thing I see is written on it that it is made in another country, and we know that there is a lot of stuff imported from another country imported here, which take a lot of our money. I think there are a number of worthy institutes in our country. I think when we after the degree, we should do something like all the engineers and doctors, and we should focus on the thing to make stuff our own. We should provide the stuff to our own so as it could improve our economy and our currency as well.
Thank you. Okay, so I want someone from the back. मैं आता हूँ आपके पास। यार कहीं पीछे हाँ दें, किसी को भी माइक दें प्लीज़। खड़े हो जाएं, बोलें। बेटा आपका माइक बंद है मुझे लगता है।
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Bakhtavar Ahmed. I'm the student of B.Ed Secondary Education. मेरा क्वेश्चन ये था कि जिस तरह आपने अभी कहा है कि टैक्सेस पे करें, तो टैक्सेस एक आम आवाम क्यों पे करे जब जितने करप्ट लोग हैं उन लोगों से टैक्स क्यों नहीं लिए जा रहे? जिन्होंने करप्शन
ओके नेक्स्ट जी, किसके पास है माइक? और जी बेटा।
अस्सलाम वालेकुम, माय नेम इज़ ईमान इमरान एंड आई एम फ्रॉम B.Ed
माइक को थोड़ा सा करीब करें, मास्क अगर उतार लें अपना।
एंड आई एम फ्रॉम B.Ed एलिमेंट्री डिपार्टमेंट। सर माय क्वेश्चन इज कि हम टैक्स देने के लिए तो रेडी हैं, लेकिन जैसे आप देखें हमारी इंस्पिरेशन क्या है, अमेरिका, चाइना, ये हम इनसे इंस्पायर होते हैं। लेकिन सर हम देने के लिए तैयार हैं, लेकिन हमें देखें एम्बुलेंस की अगर सर्विसेज देखें, हम उनको कॉल करते हैं वो हमें क्यों नहीं मिलती है। अगर हम चाइना को देखें, वो एम्बुलेंस को कॉल करते हैं, विद इन 5 मिनट के पास एम्बुलेंस होती है। अगर कोई पुलिस केस हो, हम पुलिस को बुलाते हैं, वो सब कुछ हो जाता है, सब कुछ आवाम खुद ही सॉर्ट आउट कर लेती है, तब वो पुलिस आती है। बाहर की कंट्रीज पे ऐसा नहीं होता, हमसे वो टैक्स ले रहे हैं लेकिन बदले में हमें फिर ये सहूलियतें क्यों नहीं दे रहे। अगर हम टैक्स देने के लिए तैयार है लेकिन बदले में फिर हमें भी डॉक्टर्स चाहिए। हम हॉस्पिटल जाते हैं, डॉक्टर हमें नहीं सुनते, वो कहते हैं या तो आप सिफारिश लाएं या आप बहुत सारे पैसे लाएं। वी आर रेडी टू गिव टैक्सेस, बट हमें ये भी चीज़ें चाहिए, फिर हमसे आप टैक्सेस ले लें, वो हमें ज़ाया नहीं लगेंगे।
ओके, गुड वन। ओके जी, नेक्स्ट कौन है, कहाँ पे है जी?
अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
वालेकुम सलाम।
मेरा नाम इज़बा नदीम है, इकोनॉमिक्स एंड फाइनेंस की स्टूडेंट हूँ। और आपने जो बात की
थोड़ी सी खामोशी रखें अब तक हम सवाल सुन
और आपने जो अभी टैक्स की बात की थी कि अगर हम इंक्रीज कर दें तो सबका नो आया था। लेकिन मैं अगर आपसे एक सवाल पूछूं, आप इंपोर्ट इतनी करते हैं, फजूल चीज़ों पे एक्सपेंडिचर्स करते हैं, लाइक एक पत्ती का डिब्बा लिप्टन, हमारे सीरियल नंबर्स पे 8 लिखा हुआ था, यूएस का सीरियल नंबर होता है वो आप इंपोर्ट करते हैं, उस पर टैक्स होते हैं। अगर हम उसकी जगह दानेदार मोस्टली यूज़ कर लेते हैं लोग, वो पाकिस्तान की प्रोडक्ट है, हम उसको क्यों नहीं इंक्रीज़ कर सकते? लाइक मेरा कहने का मतलब ये था कि हम फजूल चीज़ों पे खर्च कर रहे हैं, तो हम मेन चीज़ पे अगर हम अपने टैक्स इंक्रीज़ कर भी दें और पे कर भी दें तो मेन चीज़ पे फिर भी खर्च नहीं करेंगे आप लोग, फिर फ़ायदा हमारा।
अच्छा चलें, मुझे बताएं कि हम किन फजूल चीज़ों पे खर्च कर रहे हैं ताकि उनको हम कट
मैंने
करें।
अभी एक एग्जांपल दी है, लिप्टन पे सीरियल नंबर लिखा हुआ होता है, हमारे अपने कॉलगेट्स वगैरह नहीं बन सकते यहाँ पे। और जैसे मिनरल रिसोर्सेज वगैरह अगर हम देखें, हमारे स्टील वगैरह बाहर जाते हैं, लेकिन अगर हम यहाँ पे अपनी बड़ी मशीनरीज ले आएँ और मिल्स वगैरह ले आएँ, उनके लिए रेवेन्यू चाहिए, अब आप कहेंगे, और मतलब कैपिटल वगैरह चाहिए, वो नहीं है हमारे पास। लेकिन आप उन चीज़ों पे टैक्स यूज़ कर रहे हैं जो फजूल है।
Let's go back. Arup, let's go back. Everything is fuzzy. Okay, excellent. Very good. Very good. This is how we want you to speak out. This is how we want you to speak out your heart. Like, express करें उसमें. Okay, next. कौन है?
On. Assalamu alaikum. I'm Manahil Ajaz. I'm from psychology department. And मुझे ये कहना था कि हमारा जो मुल्क का जो जस्टिस सिस्टम है वो भी इतना अच्छा नहीं है, वो भी रिश्वत पे
One last.
हेलो अस्सलाम वालेकुम, माय नेम इज़ मरियम, मैं बीए साइकोलॉजी की स्टूडेंट हूँ। तो मेरा ये क्वेश्चन है कि जैसे आप कह रहे हैं कि आप लोग और टैक्सेस पे कर सकते हैं, तो ड्यूरिंग कोविड देयर वाज अ टाइम द होल पॉपुलेशन ऑफ पाकिस्तान ट्रस्टेड द गवर्नमेंट फॉर द प्रोडक्शन ऑफ
किया कर रहे हैं, बहुत अच्छा किया है। डैम है, कोई एक कनाल की कोठी नहीं है जो खड़ी हो जाएगी. It's actually they are in बन रहे हैं. अच्छा, okay. Arup, do you want to comment, respond on something, or I can just like take 2 more questions and then.
Excuse me, sir.
जी.
Sir, I have a question from here. Assalamu alaikum.
जी, बताइए.
I am from BSCS and I want to say upon the text point you raised कि आवाम से ही पैसा लेके फलाही काम हो सकते हैं. So what's the point of having Pakistan so beautiful country? Like Pakistan tourism के लिए best country है. तो हम क्यों ना वहाँ पे पैसे इन्वेस्ट करके उसको एक इकोनॉमी का ज़रिया बना लें और बजाय आवाम से पैसा लेने के हम वहाँ से पैसा लेकर अपने ही मुल्क की फलाह के लिए इस्तेमाल किया जाए.
Okay, so while Arup were presenting and we were having discussion, Tobias and Iza, both from the World Bank. Tobias, as you know, he is the lead economist at the World Bank. He was outside evaluating the arts, exhibition. So what I want Tobias to hear is, जो मैंने question आपसे पहले पूछा था, how many of you would like to pay more taxes? Say it loud. Okay, good one. Okay, 2-3 more comments I would like to really get from you is, do you think कि जो retail है, हमारा retail sector जो है, वो ज़्यादा टैक्स कंट्रीब्यूट नहीं करता. ये जो आप शॉपिंग करते हैं, दुकानों पे जाते हैं, जो रिटेल मार्केट्स हैं, जैसे रूप ने मेंशन किया, so they belong to the informal sector, means they are not actually contributing taxes in terms of like जो FPR के हैं, बिजली के बिल वो दे रहे हैं, चीज़ें हैं, but यहाँ पे नहीं है. So do you think we should bring these retail markets into the tax net? Say it again. Okay. How about the agriculture tax? How many of you think कि इस मुल्क में agriculture tax होना चाहिए? Okay. नहीं होना चाहिए. Okay, नहीं होना चाहिए. Okay. How about the property tax? Property tax जो है, property tax होना चाहिए. Okay, excellent. और ये जो हमने हाउसिंग सोसाइटीज़ और पेरी अर्बन लैंड जो हमने सब रखी हुई है, how about that? Should we tax them also? Excellent. Thank you so much. Tamina.
Assalamu alaikum. So girls, ladies and gentlemen, we've been joined by Vice Chancellor, University of Home Economics, and our Dean, Faculty of Islamic and Oriental Learning. So let's welcome Professor Dr. Hazara Kazmi. Dr. Fahim, you must continue from here.
Okay, what a fulfilling session this was. So now we are moving towards our discussion session number 3, which is unleashing the productive economy, but with a particular focus on the private sector. For this, I will request Mr. Tobias Haq, who is the lead country economist at the World Bank, to please come on stage and present. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. So thank you so much for having us. I just wanted to start off by thanking Fahim for his work in setting this up, but also to our two presenters so far today, Arub and Iza, both of whom are young Pakistani women really doing amazing things for the country in the World Bank. So I hope that they've been a bit of an inspiration for you, because I think that there is a lot of space for young women to participate in all areas of policy in Pakistan. And certainly at the World Bank, we're constantly looking for young, energetic people, especially with backgrounds in economics or public policy or a wide range of scientific disciplines. So, please keep an eye on what the World Bank's doing, and we really hope that we can keep engaging with many of you in some capacity in the future. So I wanted to, so firstly, my name is Tobias Haq. I'm the lead country economist for the World Bank here in Pakistan. What that means is I have a bit of an overview of all of the various economic engagements that we have. And the World Bank, as you probably know, is a major donor to Pakistan. We have a current portfolio of about $15 billion. We have projects in all different sectors, ranging from the private sector to infrastructure to energy to agriculture to health to education, as you've heard. And we really try and provide an important source both of advice and financing to the government to address its economic challenges. So I wanted to talk about one area of those economic challenges today, and that's really about the private sector and the role of the private sector. Can I click through, or how do I shift the slides? It's this one? Okay, so look, I mean, I think the key point that I want to start with, right, is that no economy in the world has ever grown sustainably without the active role of the private sector. It is people's activities, it's the business community, it's employment, it's entrepreneurship. That has been the major driver of growth in every successful economy. Every economy that's achieved major rates of economic growth, major rates of poverty reduction over the past century. It's come from private sector activity. And in Pakistan at the moment, we are not seeing that. We're not seeing that energy coming from the private sector. And why should we care about this? Maybe we're not business people. Maybe we don't want to work in business. So why should we care about that? The reason is that what we've seen over the past decade is that the rate of economic growth has slowed. And because of that, there are more people in poverty than there could be. We have seen poverty rates really decline for the first 2 decades, basically, of the 2000s. So between 2000 and 2018, we saw the poverty rate halve, and a lot of that was driven by people moving from farms into services, into the private sector in cities, and that drove really fast rates of economic growth because people were able to do more productive activities. They were able to work in firms and businesses that made the best use of their skills, and because of that, the economy overall expanded and poverty fell quite sharply. What we've seen since 2018, and even before that, is that rate of poverty reduction has slowed, and over the past years it's reversed. So we've actually seen, we estimate, about a 5 percentage point increase in poverty. So that means that the poverty rate, basically the number of people falling below the international poverty line, has increased from 35% to 40%. What that means is 12 million people, we estimate, since 2018, 12 million Pakistanis are now living in poverty. 12 million additional Pakistanis are now living in poverty. So 40% of the population, and 12 million additional falling below the poverty line since 2018. So this is it's not a sustainable situation, and it's not a situation that is allowing Pakistan to achieve its development outcomes. It's also useful to note that Pakistan has also fallen behind other countries. And I think this is a point that Fahim was making as well at the start of this discussion session today. What we've seen is that Pakistan has moved from being one of the wealthiest countries in South Asia to now being one of the poorest countries in South Asia. And if we look at Pakistan's rate of economic growth over the past 2 decades, what we see is it's among the lowest, both in terms of the region and in terms of other countries around the world that Pakistan often compares itself to. So you can see that in terms of the chart on the right-hand side there. So compared to Ethiopia, Bangladesh, India, Pakistan really not achieving very much economic growth at all. So real per capita income is just falling further and further behind. What we've seen in Pakistan as well is that the growth that has happened tends to have come from government spending and consumption. So these taxes that people really don't like paying, what's happening with those taxes to a large extent is they're being taken by the government, and I think as you've recognized, they are being used for not necessarily the most productive purposes. They're being used for consumption. They are fueling consumption in the economy, and it is not creating the basis for sustainable or sustained growth. So what we're seeing is rather than government putting money into the things that can support future growth, we've seen government money being spent on subsidies or its own recurrent costs, its running costs, as Arub pointed out. So we're not creating the foundations for future economic growth. What we've also seen is very low rates of private investment as well. So firms are looking at the economy, they're saying, we don't think we have much potential here, we don't think we have a lot of future here, and they're not putting money into equipment, they're not putting money into facilities, they're not putting money into capital equipment. Instead, they're holding back their investments, and so Pakistan has a very low rate of private sector investment as well. So both low government investment and low private sector investment. And what that means is that you're just not having the foundations created in the economy for sustained future growth. You need that capital to grow the economy. You need the infrastructure, you need the capital equipment to grow the economy. And that investment in that equipment and capital is just not happening. Finally, what we've seen in Pakistan is productivity very low and exports very low. So by productivity, I mean the amount that a firm can produce with a set number of inputs. So a set number of staff, a set amount of capital. What can a firm produce with that? Well, what we've actually seen is the productivity of firms has been declining over time in Pakistan. It's very unusual internationally. So the amount of value that Pakistan is generating per worker is declining over time. At the same time, we've seen exports in Pakistan fall very quickly as well. So while we have kept exports roughly consistent as a share of the economy, that share is very low, around 10% of GDP. And you compare Pakistan with some other countries that in some ways are similar, and that looks like very poor performance. Look at Vietnam. Just take Vietnam as an example. And this is the chart on the right-hand side. In 2001, Vietnam accounted for $23 of every $10,000 of global exports. So the amount of exports being produced all around the world, for $10,000, Vietnam accounted for 23 of them. Right now, Vietnam accounts for $123. So its share of global exports has increased 6 times over the past 20 years. It's increased 6 times by integrating into global supply chains, by becoming involved in the production of consumer goods, by meeting demand from China and other emerging economies. Vietnam has exploded in terms of its production, in terms of the jobs that are created, in terms of the wealth that is being created in that economy. You compare that to Pakistan. 2001, our exports accounted for $14 for every $10,000 of global exports. Today, that number has decreased. So Vietnam has increased 6 times, 600%. Pakistan has decreased. So Pakistan is not keeping up in terms of the private sector. It's not keeping up in terms of what the economy produces or how it produces. Why? We think that there are 5 main reasons for this. And there are many other reasons as well, but the 5 we really wanted to pick up, 5 key areas. Firstly, lack of access to finance. What do we mean by that? Well, if you're starting a business, you need to borrow money. You often need to borrow money to grow your business. In Pakistan, it's very hard for firms to borrow money from banks. Does anyone know why? Because the banks are lending money to the government rather than to firms. So 80% of bank lending in Pakistan is now to the government, 80%. And this comes back to the points that Arub was making. The government's finances are very unsustainable. Government is heavily reliant on borrowing. So the banks, which are meant to provide the social function of providing loans to firms so that they can grow and they can expand their markets, instead, banks are simply lending money to the government, and the government is taking that money and it is paying civil servants and it is paying subsidies and it is running its operations, but without the production and expansion of the productive capacity of the economy. So we need to do something about that. The second area is the complexity of the business environment. And lots of people have talked about this. This is the idea of sludge, the regulatory burden. If you're opening a business, you have to deal with 40 regulatory agencies at the federal and provincial level. There's so many forms to fill in, so much red tape, so much certification that you need. It slows everything down and it makes it very difficult for firms to do business. Just as an example of this, the Investment Act in Pakistan, which is 30 years old, it currently says that the only foreign investment allowed in Pakistan is investment in sectors where there is no domestic investment. And that just doesn't make sense. It's saying to foreign investors, you're not welcome here in any sector where there is domestic investment, and that's basically every sector, because every sector has some kind of domestic investment. So you still have a law on the books that effectively makes foreign investment technically illegal in most areas. So these regulatory and legal burdens that are really pulling the economy down. The third area, we have 400 state-owned enterprises in Pakistan. So 200 at the federal level, an estimated 200 at the provincial level. These are state-owned, state-run companies, government-run companies, and they're doing many of the things that the private sector could do, and probably the private sector could do more efficiently and more sustainably. So we have the state owning huge amounts of assets, the state running firms, running businesses, and doing it in an inefficient way that pulls down the productivity of the overall economy. So this huge state presence is very important. The subsidization of business, the subsidization of production techniques distorts the economy. It encourages people to do things that aren't productive, and it has the state involved in many areas of the economy where the private sector could organize things better, and the profit motive could come to play to really generate productivity growth and increasing productivity. The fourth area is the extent to which Pakistan is protecting itself from international trade. The economies that have grown fastest over the past few decades, past 50 years, are those economies that have taken the opportunities provided by international trade. They've seen the opportunity to export to China, to export to the United States, to become involved in global supply chains, to import inputs from around the world, to add value and to export to growing consumer markets everywhere. Those are the economies that have grown. What Pakistan has done is it's put up barriers around its economy. It has put in place tariffs, it has increased those tariffs, so now it is very hard for firms to import, and because it is hard for firms to import, it's very expensive for firms to import, firms are much more likely to sell to the domestic market. They're much more likely to sell to domestic consumers than try to export to foreign markets because they have a captive market where prices are high, where profits are high. There's no incentive for firms to export when they don't have to compete with imports and selling to the domestic market. So you have a major distortion there as well. And then finally, what we've seen is these periodic interventions in the exchange rate. We've seen various governments come along and say, we want to control the exchange rate, we want to regulate the exchange rate. And what that's done is undermined any confidence, it's undermined the sustainability and exposed Pakistan to these periodic macroeconomic shocks. So I'm going to just run through some of the recommendations that we have for resolving the situation. Oh, sorry, one more very important point I wanted to raise as well. And this is about female labor force participation. So around the world and even in South Asia, Pakistan is an outlier in terms of the low rates of female labor force participation, the low number of women actually working in jobs, working in employment, available for employment. So we have an estimate of about 23% of women are currently involved in the labor market. So only 23% are even looking for jobs in the labor market because of a whole range of constraints around transport, around cultural norms, around education, some of the issues that Isa talked about. Only 8% of women actually able to realize their human capital. So the important lesson also from this chart is that even women with education, even women who've completed secondary education, are very unlikely to participate in the labor force. So 20%. Only 20% of women with a secondary education are currently even available to work in the labor market at the moment. So it's not just an education problem, as you were pointing out earlier. There's lots of constraints that need to be addressed here. But at the moment, how can an economy grow when half of its population is not participating in the productive sector? How can an economy grow where half of your potential labor force is simply excluded from participation? So, on to our recommendations. We have basically 6 sets of recommendations. Obviously, to fix access to finance, we need to do something about the government's financing, about the fiscal deficit, about the extent to which the government is absorbing lending from banks rather than allowing banks to lend to the private sector. So if the government got its finances in order, there would be much more financing available from banks that could be lent to the private sector, that could be lent to firms to allow firms to expand their operations. Secondly, there's the red tape in the business environment. We think there's coordinated action needed at both the federal government and the provincial government to cut through that red tape and make it possible for firms to operate efficiently and effectively. We think, can I just get the slides back, please? We think in terms of the presence of the state within the economy, we have, there's clearly a need to privatize some of the SOEs. There's clearly a need to improve the operations of these state-owned enterprises, to reduce the presence of the state in the economy, and make sure that the private sector is competing on an even basis with some of the government-owned companies that are operating in productive sectors. The next set of actions, we think there needs to be substantial reform to trade barriers, reduction of trade barriers, so that Pakistan can export, so that Pakistan can participate in the global market and not confine itself to selling to the domestic market. We think there needs to be a flexible exchange rate, which is what every successful country has done during periods of macroeconomic stability and rapid growth. This is not unusual. This is absolutely well-established mechanism for ensuring stability, for protecting the economy from shocks. Having a flexible exchange rate, absolutely key. And finally, addressing some of these constraints to labour force participation. What can be done to bring more women into the workforce? And I don't think that's a simple question. And I think that some of the discussion today has already pointed out that much of this is about society and culture. And that's not something that we at the World Bank necessarily know a lot about. We're not experts on. But what we can say is that providing women with safe public transport so that they can get to workplaces is important. Expanding access to the internet so that women can take advantage of online work opportunities, the gig economy is super important. Addressing the education gaps that disadvantage women from a very young age. Clearly that's a priority for everybody. And there may be some need for us to directly help those firms that are employing women, because firms employing women provides a really important demonstration effect. It shows other firms that it's profitable to employ women, and that can encourage other firms to take up more inclusive labor practices. So I have complained a lot about the state of things in Pakistan. But I think that that's necessary, because the place where Pakistan's economy is at the moment is simply not delivering for most Pakistanis. But what our analysis also shows is that Pakistan has enormous potential. You have a country of 250 million people. You have proximity to some of the fastest growing markets in the world. You have a very young, entrepreneurial, active, energetic population. There is so much that could be done. And what our analysis shows is that with the right policies in place, we could get exports of up to 88 billion realized. So that's about around about 2.5 times what we have today. We could see growth rates of 7 or 8%, and that would mean that Pakistan within a generation could catch up to the levels of income of a Vietnam or an Indonesia or a Malaysia. And we have enormous potential to attract more foreign direct investment, more international investment, if just these simple constraints could be addressed. So we see enormous potential for Pakistan's private sector, but now is the time that we're going to have to see some very serious reforms to allow that potential to be realized. Let me stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tobias. Now, to moderate this session, I would like to invite Mr. Aqib Asif, who is Member Board Privatization, to please come on the stage. And again, you have to participate.
Good afternoon, teachers, students, dignitaries. I am Aqib Asif, entrepreneur, Board of Director, Punjab Power Development Board, and Lahore Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Tobias, first of all, thank you very much for such an in-depth analysis on the reforms and the state of the economy. There was this question by Dr. Fahim about taxing the agriculture industry in Pakistan. To most of the students said no. एक सवाल पूछते हैं पहले, बहुत सारे लोग हैं हॉल में. How many of you know, raise of hands, as of August 2023, there are 171 political parties in Pakistan. कितने लोगों को पता है कि पाकिस्तान में 171 political parties हैं इस वक्त ECP के साथ registered? Okay, no raise of hands so far. Agriculture is their main business of all the politicians. तो क्या अब टैक्स लगाना है एग्रीकल्चर पे कि नहीं? That is a major question. अभी भी नहीं लगा. So please, 3 महीने के बाद इलेक्शन है, देख के वोट करिएगा. We're going to move on to a very important question about this session. This session is all about how we're going to make money as a country, how we're going to increase our revenues. जो स्टेट ओन एंटरप्राइजेज़ हैं इस वक्त पाकिस्तान की, जिसमें आपके PIA है, स्टील मिल है और जिस तरह के डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं, क्या इनको प्राइवेटाइजेशन की तरफ जाना चाहिए? इनको भी प्राइवेटाइजेशन की तरफ नहीं जाना चाहिए. Okay, let's take up some comments from the audience. How you guys think we can improve our exports? How we can improve our revenue? Mics, please. Mic इधर दे दें, please.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Afra Fatma. I'm from the economics department. One of the things that was initially highlighted in the discussion was that we need to increase entrepreneurship and investment in order to increase economic growth. One of the things that I would recommend with regards to adding to the list of suggestions that you have is that collaborating with universities. So Lahore College for Women University has introduced the Khadijatul Kubra Incubation Center. So we are giving students trainings with regards to how they can start their own business, with regards to startups, etc. So wouldn't that also, that would achieve a two-pronged objective? You'd have women empowerment, female labor force participation, and you'd have that investment that you want. So I would suggest adding that to your document with regards to the recommendations with how to improve investments, how to increase entrepreneurship, is collaboration with universities that are offering these services with regards to incubation centers. And like I mentioned, Lahore College does offer that. And if we received more, say, funding and collaboration, then that would make that center grow further and would really help not only empowering women, but also achieving that investment and entrepreneurship objective that we have.
That is a very good insight. Thank you so much. Yes, entrepreneurship versus job is a very important question. I actually want to ask all the audience as well. Okay, if a general consensus is taken, how many of you are more interested in doing a job, and how many of you are interested in doing entrepreneurship or your own business? तो जो गवर्नमेंट की जो स्कीम्स इस वक्त रिसेंटली गवर्नमेंट ने बैंक ऑफ पंजाब के साथ बहुत सारी स्कीम्स की, हमारी पंजाब गवर्नमेंट भी कर रही है, बहुत सारे इदारे हैं जो ग्रांट्स खासतौर पे वुमेन ओरिएंटेड ग्रांट्स निकालते हैं. सो हैव यू अप्लाई टू दोज रिसेंटली? उसमें क्या हिकअप्स आ रहे हैं आपको ग्रांट्स अप्लाई करने के अंदर? व्हाट आर द चैलेंजेस इन गेटिंग दोज ग्रांट्स? इफ एनीबडी कैन टेल अस मोर अबाउट दैट एज वेल, सो वी कैन नो how to ease those processes for the women in entrepreneurship. Please.
So even though we'd like more students to answer that, but since you're talking about winning grants, in particular for women institutions, well, if I put it very honestly, it's not a level playing field. If you look around, you cannot compare what is happening in LUMS to what is happening in a public sector university. You have, I could just, really count them on my fingers. You know what is happening in LUMS, what is happening in NUST, which is though technically public sector, but since their funding comes from Ministry of Science and Technology, they do not compare to a university like Lahore College Women University and several other. We have presence from University of Home Economics, we have presence from UET Lahore. So the conditions that we have, they just do not compare to what is, let's say, happening in LUMS. Now, a student who is studying here struggles with paying close to 40,000 rupees per semester. We have several scholarships, but we have several students who are not even able to afford 40,000 per semester. And now there is a student which is going to LUMS. I just want to put a big figure, but I think I won't be exactly correct. An undergraduate degree for the moment in LUMS costs about 5 million at least, 5 million Pakistani rupees. And similar is the case with faculty. So when we do not have, the same, when we do not have the same everything, when we do not have a level playing field, we are naturally disadvantaged in winning grants. Then second, if I may add, which is not, I'm not sure if it's, I'm actually quite sure it's not in the control of the stakeholders present here. But for instance, Higher Education Commission of Pakistan has categorized universities into two categories: research-intensive universities and non-research intensive universities. Now, those universities which they have categorized as non-research intensive are made ineligible to apply for a large number of grants. They say you're a non-research intensive university, so you're not even allowed to apply for bigger projects and bigger grants. Now, it is noteworthy that there are, I think, 17 women universities in Pakistan, and none of them are classified as research intensive university. Now, what happens, if I extrapolate this, what happens is that, let's say, I'm a mid-career person, 10 or 20 years later, I'm competing for a higher education leadership position from, let's say, a male colleague from NUST, and it is going to appear that, look, this particular person from NUST has had many large projects to their credit, whereas this woman does not. So strictly speaking on merit, we can't allow her to use what they call a woman card. We're going to appoint him, but nobody is going to look at that there was a systematic bias which started 20 years ago, that this woman was not even allowed to apply for that big grant. Don't want to make a mini speech, which I'm afraid I already have, so would just end by saying that it is noteworthy that not a single national center in this country is in any one of these 17 women universities. The Planning Commission again decides to support labs and build national centers, and surprise, surprise, it ends up in NUST, NED, UET Lahore, and then we talk about that women are majorly, squarely lagging behind in STEM fields.
Thank you so much. I think that's a very important point which has come into the consideration, that we should put forward to the government that women universities should have more access to the grants, and especially the incubation centers, we should support them more. It's a very good point. Thank you so much for that. Next. Can you please give the mic to the woman in the front?
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Aisha Zaki. I am from BS Semester 1 Islamic Studies.
Where is it? Oh, okay. Okay.
यहाँ पे सब लोग जो मुख्तलिफ बातें कर रहे हैं, and obviously हम सीख भी रहे हैं. My basic question is कि हमें ये education सिखाई जा रही है. Like मैंने एक Indian institution की वीडियो देखी थी, जिनमें in 12th standard they were telling their students how they can become entrepreneurs. Like वहाँ पे एक proper system था कि कैसे उनके जो students हैं वो अपना business शुरू कर सकते हैं. They just provide them things and then allow them to express their ideas. कि आप अपना बिजनेस कैसे इस्टेब्लिश करना है, आप हमें आइडियाज़ दें. तो वैसी ही कोई चीज़ पाकिस्तानी इंस्टीट्यूशंस में क्यों नहीं होती? बहुत सारे लोग जो है तालीम हासिल करते हैं, लेकिन हमारे मुल्क के बारे में जो चीज़ बहुत ज़्यादा मशहूर है वो यही है कि पाकिस्तान में एम्प्लॉयमेंट नहीं है. लोग यहाँ पे बहुत ज़्यादा एजुकेशन लेते हैं, लेकिन कहते हैं कि हमने US जाना है, दुबई जाना है, कि हम अपने आप को इस्टेब्लिश कर सकें. क्यों?
Okay, so creating the environment, as Tobias said, as Tobias mentioned in his very informative presentation as well, that there are a lot of reforms that need to be happen as soon as the next government comes into it. And yes, ease of doing business is a very, very important part of it. The previous governments have worked on it, and we have brought down our index from, which was about 120, we are now into its 70s or 80s. So it's a good sign, and we are hopeful that we will be able to bring it more further down. So for the new entrepreneurs, you will have easier way to start your own businesses and everything. One of the suggestions to the government is, which he has mentioned, is to bring most of the agencies online on a digital platform. So you don't have to run around to so many agencies and get different licenses from different institutions. It can be done digitally from one platform. So thank you so much for this.
Thank you very much, sir. My name is Zubair Yusuf. I'm from our foundation. I just point out the findings of World Bank about the economic participation of women. Actually, I think they told that it is very less, so I think 20% or 23%, but it's maybe get from the formal sector. Actually, the women in Pakistan who are invisible in our economic setup, they are in agriculture sector. I think 19 activities of agriculture are performed by women in agriculture, but their income is not in their hands. They are deceived by their male partners, either his husband or a brother, or they are not paid for it. And there are a lot of women who are working as a home-based worker, and they are producing many products which are contributing in economy of Pakistan, but they are also not included in that data. And this means that we ignore these in formal sectors women, working women, and otherwise it's okay that our civil society organizations are connecting with them और उनके साथ उनका ताल्लुक है और उनकी कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग, चाहे वो बैंक अकाउंट्स हों, चाहे वो उनकी डिजिटाइजेशन हो, लेकिन जाहिर है कि सिविल सोसाइटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के पास भी इतने रिसोर्सेज नहीं है कि वो उन तक पहुंच सकें और उनको विजिबल कर सकें. तो काइंडली कंसीडर दीज वुमेन हु आर इनविजिबल, and there are a lot of women who was contributing in economic sector.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your insight, sir. Yes.
Hi, my name is Shahar. I'm from University of Bolton. As a student who is here on UK-Pakistan Mobility Grant, as a research student, I guess you were talking about grants. I think one thing it's important is knowing how to write a grant proposal when you are submitting it. So what are the informations that you need? What can you prepare to submit for this grant? As a student or as a faculty member, I think that's something that kind of surface level you could focus on. How to write a grant proposal, how to, prepare a solid proposal that could win you the grant.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think since the incubation center is now here, gradually they will be giving out the awareness sessions to all your students to how to prepare those grant works and how to come up with the paperwork. And please look online. There are a lot of grants which are there. World Bank has a lot of grants. USAID has a lot of grants. They do a lot of work, especially if they have very specific grants for women-led businesses, and they tend to give that to them. So, thank you. Yes, any further questions, please? Any further comments that you want to make? I want to ask one question about Pakistan is stuck in a cycle of economy in terms of हम ज़्यादातर textile-based industry हैं या engineering sector है. How we can diversify our economy as young entrepreneurs? What sectors you feel that you want to work in, or the government should make new reforms so that you can get engaged into it? Like, for example, the financial sector, the digital finance is one of the fastest growing, fintech is the fastest growing sector in the country and globally. So are there any further sectors that you feel that the government should focus on? Yes, ma'am.
Assalamu alaikum. Your question is very valid. मैं एक्चुअली ये कहना चाहती हूँ कि हमारी गवर्नमेंट को और हमारे सारे सेक्टर्स को जो हम वी वांट टू गो फॉर रिफॉर्म्स इन डिफरेंट सेक्टर्स, हमें फोकस करना चाहिए कि हम डिजिटल फ्रीलांसिंग जो है वो बड़े इजीली हम उसको प्रमोट कर सकते हैं, और उसमें जितनी भी डिफ़िकल्टीज़ हैं हमें फेस हो रही हैं, पर्टिकुलरली इन द फॉर्म ऑफ पेमेंट फ्रॉम फॉरेन कंट्रीज़, उसको हमारी गवर्नमेंट को चाहिए दे शुड मेक अ लेजिस्लेटिव ग्रुप फॉर दैट, और उसमें हमारी हेल्प करें. लाइक वी आर नॉट हैविंग पेपॉल इन पाकिस्तान, सो वी शुड फोकस ऑन दैट. और इसमें गवर्नमेंट शुड मेक अथॉरिटी जो कि या एक इसको जो डिजिटल फ्री लांसर्स हैं उनको रिकग्नाइज़ करें और उनका एक सेक्टर बनाए फॉर दैट, और उसके लिए एक अथॉरिटी बनाए जो उनको पूरा हर लिहाज से उनको जो है वो सिस्टम को जो है स्ट्रीमलाइन करें। आपको भी पता होगा कि वी आर ऑन नंबर 3rd इन फ्रीलांसिंग इन अमेज़ॉन ऑल ओवर द वर्ल्ड। तो अगर हम उसमें नंबर 3rd पे आ सकते हैं तो वाई नॉट इन अदर सेक्टर्स, जिसमें आप देखें कि तो आई थिंक दिस इज़ द ईजीएस्ट वे टू चैनलाइज अवर यूथ इन वेरी यूज़फुल यूथ। तो इसको अगर कोई गवर्नमेंट का कोई भी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, कोई भी फोरम है, सिर्फ एक इस बात को हम फोकस कर लें तो आप देखें अभी भी हम नंबर 3rd पे हैं। इंडिया इज़ ऑन नंबर 1 एंड देन बांग्लादेश एंड देन पाकिस्तान। तो सिर्फ इसको अगर आप इस वॉइस को रेस करें, ओनली वन वॉइस फ्रॉम ऑल कैटेगरीज जानी चाहिए गवर्नमेंट को, एंड गवर्नमेंट शुड मेक अ अथॉरिटी और उसमें ये सारे फ्रीलांसर्स जो हैं हैविंग डिफरेंट सॉफ्टवेयर बना रहे हैं, या कोई अगर डिजिटल फाइनेंसिंग में हेल्प कर रहा है, या कोई और भी क्रिएटिव अगर डिज़ाइनिंग कर रहे हैं, तो इस सब को ईजी वे में रजिस्टर करें और फिर पेपॉल को यहाँ लेके आएँ। तो आप देखें कि हमारा जो अभी हम नंबर 3rd पे हैं तो वी विल बी ऑन नंबर 1 इंशाल्लाह।
I 110% agree with you, ma'am. Stripe, PayPal, payment gateways are the biggest issue that Pakistani freelancers are facing, and not just a policy on digital freelance. I think we need policy on a lot of other digital products. Like, for example, we were getting ready to prepare a policy on the OTTs, which was and the video on demand platforms, जिसमें हम Netflix को, Disney को, Facebook को, YouTube को पाकिस्तान में encourage करने थे आने के लिए, and that also got halted. So we are hopeful that the government will definitely look into this and will try to have them in Pakistan soon as possible. Yes, that lady over there.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। आपने दोबारा अभी जो बात की है टैक्स बढ़ाने की स्टार्टिंग में,
Can you please stand up? Okay, over there.
आवाज़ आ रही है ना? अच्छा, आपने भी स्टार्टिंग में जो दोबारा बात की थी टैक्स बढ़ाने की, तो आप टैक्स बढ़ाने की बात करते हैं लेकिन इक्वालिटी की बात नहीं करते। लाइक 17 ग्रेड और 16 ग्रेड के जो ऑफिसर्स हैं उनको फ्री बिजली दी जाती है, घर दिया जाता है और कार्स वगैरह दी जाती हैं, बट आप और आप फिर कहते हैं कि हम टैक्स बढ़ाएंगे, तो हम किस चीज़ का टैक्स दें? उनके हिस्से का भी हमने ही देना है अगर तो। और ऐसे तो हमारी इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ नहीं बढ़ेगी। जब अमीर लोग अमीर ही होते रहेंगे और हम गरीब लोग गरीब ही होते रहेंगे, उनके हिस्से के भी टैक्स पे करते।
Are you done? Okay. I will just put that point across to the government. मैं इस पे अभी कमेंट नहीं करूँगा क्योंकि आप ब्यूरोक्रेट से पूछेंगे वो कहेंगे हम कोई बिजली नहीं ले रहे, हमसे गवर्नमेंट ने सब कुछ वापस ले लिया. So last question now before we wind up and go to Tobias for summary. Yes, ma'am.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Fasiya Shaukat and I want to talk that कि हम यूथ के लिए भी लाइक यूनिवर्सिटीज़ में भी इस तरह के इंडस्ट्रीज़ या प्रोग्राम्स करने चाहिए ताकि हम एज ए यूथ हम 18 ईयर्स के हो गए हैं और वी आर डिपेंडेंट ऑन आवर पेरेंट्स. तो हमें भी लाइक रिलेटेड टू आवर फील्ड्स कोई ऐसे प्रोग्राम्स होने चाहिए जिसके अंदर हम पार्ट लें और हम उसके लिए पे मिले और हम भी थोड़ा इंडिपेंडेंट हों.
It's a good point. Since I have been on the board of Lahore Chamber, I can give this answer to you that there are, in every chamber, there are committees for industry academia linkages that connects the students with the industry. So I urge you that you should go to your teachers, your student counselors and ask them to connect you to those committees that can put you directly with the industry.
Sir, I want to say something. Very good highlighted by this young girl. The Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Shagufta, when came to my the first day for the first year in pharmacy, she highlighted that you should not dependent fully on your parents. So in Women University, it's always cultivated among the students that you should ensure your responsibility towards yourself and society. What I want to say, there is a large gap between the cottage industry and the proper industry. So we are winding up our cottage industry, which was a base in Bangladesh, which was placed by a Muslim economist over there, and they are such a high place over there. But I want to say, if I clearly say in Sialkot, there are surgical instruments which are made. And if you see the polishing of that, if this technique is only learned to the students or to our homes at home and supply them certain small equipment to do, why we don't aggravate the proper GDP into the country's GDP? What I want to say, there are small techniques that we can learn to our new young ones, even the medium-aged women, even the males, or the upper age limits at home to make them sufficient to earn money for themselves or for the country, because our mostly money we are wasting on importing. We are importing everything. I am talking about just a cosmetics. Cosmeceutical is a main branch of pharmaceutical sciences. जब मैंने इसको पढ़ा तो जो कॉस्मेटिक का फेस पाउडर है जो ख़वातीन इतना यूज़ करती हैं, उसके अंदर जो इंग्रेडिएंट है वो भी इंपोर्ट हो रहे हैं. अब आप मुझे ये बताएं, मैं बोल बोल के थक गई हूँ PPMA के साथ भी और उधर भी, कि आप जो रिसर्च R&D, क्योंकि फार्मास्यूटिकल जो है वो इस वक्त पाकिस्तान की सेकंड लार्जेस्ट इंडस्ट्री है आफ्टर टेक्सटाइल. तो मैंने कहा आप R&D के पैसे ड्रैप को दे रहे हैं, आप इस R&D के पैसे से क्या कर रहे हैं? When I talked to my senior who is a chairman of DRAP now, मैंने उसको कहा, कहते हैं वो जो सारा पैसा है वो तो गवर्नमेंट ऊपर बैठी हुई है, अब उससे पुल बन रहे हैं, उससे सड़कें बन रही हैं. अगर सिर्फ R&D के पैसे से, जो कि कभी UGC को दिया जाता था और वो R&D के पैसे से लोगों को बाहर PhD करवाई जाती थी जब HEC नहीं था, अगर सिर्फ उस R&D के पैसे को प्रॉपर यूटिलाइज कर लिया जाए ना इन यूनिवर्सिटीज़, तो मेरा ख्याल है कि वो सब कुछ जो हम इंपोर्ट करते हैं, क्योंकि हमारे ऊपर सबसे पहला सवाल होता है आपने दवाई खुद क्या बनाई है? आपके घर में जो पैरासीटामोल है उसका मॉलिक्यूल भी आप इंपोर्ट कर रहे हैं. तो मैं आपसे ये कहना चाहती हूँ, हमारा इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट जो कि एक मुकम्मल बिजनेसमैन है, वो कभी नहीं करेगा, वो कभी नहीं बैठेगा. Why he should sit with us? वो क्यों बैठे रिसर्चर के साथ? उसकी पैरासीटामोल बिक रही है. हर बच्चा जो आपके पाकिस्तान में पैदा होता है वो पैदा बाद में होता है, दवाई पहले उसको मिल जाती है, उसकी माँ से लेकर और उसके बुढ़ापे तक. ये हार्ड लाइन गवर्नमेंट्स लेती हैं. ये गवर्नमेंट्स हार्ड लाइन लेती हैं कि तुम इंडस्ट्री उस वक्त खोलोगे जब तुम्हारे साथ एक रॉ मटेरियल की इंडस्ट्री, तुम साथ उसके एक प्लांट बनाओगे. जब आप उनको फ्री हैंड देते हैं तो वो खाते जाते हैं. अब सारी इंपोर्ट्स पे है, सब कुछ हमारा इंपोर्ट पे बेस्ड है, और जब तक आपकी इंपोर्ट होती रहेगी आपका GDP कभी नहीं बढ़ सकता.
I 110% agree with you. I would just put down the concluding remarks that yes, you have pointed out the right thing about the research and development in this country, which is zero. One of the examples that Mr. Ali just gave was that Toyota in the world is making in 3 seconds, 3 minutes or so? 3 seconds. And we are taking 30 cars in a month. तो हमने आज तक जो सबसे स्टेबल हमारा सेक्टर था उसमें कभी R&D नहीं की. So developing a paracetamol is way ahead in that. I think whatever has been discussed so far, it is to the point, and I personally feel that whenever you go into the future, please try to diversify, because you are the women of the society. Try to encourage your children, try to encourage them to take other disciplines, because that is going to be the key for our economy as well.
I have a final question, if that's possible.
Okay, just last one,
Yeah.
please. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm from Punjab University. I just wanted to discuss how socio-cultural norms are included in the reforms, right? When we talk about, someone mentioned that we are born disadvantaged when we talk about women. So when you talk about giving them opportunities for entrepreneurship or creating business incubation centers, where are the leadership qualities that are going to come from? So that is something that I want to talk about and something that I want to highlight, कि हमारे cultural norms ही उस तरह के हैं कि women are told to speak less, be less. So how do you think, when you talk about reforms for a brighter future, how do you take that into account? Thank you.
Thank you so much. We will, as World Bank has been working very profoundly on this subject, and I'm sure that the kind of opportunities that they are creating for women entrepreneurship, women diversity, and the kind of awareness they are creating, I'm sure that you guys have to take the courage as well to stand for whatever you want to do. I'm sure my sister is working, my wife is working, nobody is stopping them. You have to take the initiative in your hand that you have to do something for yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Akib. Now I would welcome Mr. Tobias Haq again to summarize. Thank you.
Hey. Look, thank you very much. I'll be very quick because we're at the end of the time. So I wanted to say first, thank you so much. Let's remember why we're doing this. The World Bank is engaged in this process with PIDE because we want to give any government coming in some new ideas. And you have provided us with excellent feedback today. And let me be very honest. You've provided us with feedback from people we don't normally hear from. Normally we go to meetings and we hear from old men. They're always the old men talking. But here we've heard from young women, and it makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference because we're hearing things we don't normally hear, and you've brought a lot of insight to this conversation that's really, really useful to us. So thank you so much. I think we've heard a lot. Let me just, very, very quickly, just to show that we have heard. I think your main point on human capital, on education, was that women face disadvantage from society, they face exclusion culturally from the family. There's a whole range of areas where this disadvantage comes from. It's not just the public policies, it's not just the technical side. There's a lot that needs to change more broadly in society. I think we've heard that. I'm not sure how much the World Bank can do about that, but I think it's a message that we can take to the government, and it's a message that we can reflect in what we're producing and what we're advising. I think on the fiscal, it sounds like not many of you want to pay more tax. I think that's what we heard. So I understand that. And I think that what we are saying as the World Bank is that the tax system at the moment doesn't work because it is taxing a very small number of people and imposing very high taxes on them. So we agree with you. I think what we are saying is that people with the means need to pay their share. We need a property tax. We need to look at agricultural taxation. We need to make sure that those that are very wealthy, that are driving the Mercedes-Benzes, that are in the top layers of the political and business leadership, they are paying their share of taxes. And we need to find ways to make that happen. We agree with you. I think the third point that I heard is that what it's going to take to make this economy take off is really engaging with the entrepreneurial capacities of people. It's not just about policy, it's not just about the framework, it's about entrepreneurship, it's about finding ways that women can engage in the digital economy, it's encouraging entrepreneurship, and it's engaging with universities as a way of building that entrepreneurship. So 100% agree, and very, very useful message for us. So thank you very much. This is an ongoing conversation, right? So we want to hear from you. So please get on the website, send an email, send me an email, any thoughts you have. You should have all of that available. Reforms for a Brighter Future. If you just Google it, you will find us. We want to keep hearing from you. Any ideas you have, anything you want to say to us, any events you want us to attend, please just let us know. This is an ongoing conversation and we really appreciate it. Thank you again so much. For the final thing, let me just hand over to Isa, who's going to present the awards for this amazing competition that we had. So many great entries. It was very hard for us to pick the winners. But thank you to everyone that put the time into preparing an entry. And the quality was amazing, and it was a very, very difficult choice to decide. Thank you.
So students, you've been extraordinary, you know, but अपना सिर्फ 10 मिनट और मुझे पता है आपने जाना है, I understand that fully, लेकिन the good behavior that you've exhibited so far, you know, just 10 to 15 more minutes, you know, so now I'm... So I will take the names and then Madam DC. Oh, she'll talk first? Okay. And I think this is the most important part of the day for you anyway. So now I invite our Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Shagufta Naz, to share her views. After this, we will have the announcement of the winners of the poster and art competition, and then feel free to leave. So again, once again, please clap for your Vice Chancellor.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Respected members from World Bank and Pakistan Institute of Development Economics, deans, directors, all participating members, and my very dear students, Assalamu alaikum. It is a source of great honor and pride for LCWU to host World Bank and Pakistan Institute of Development Economics today here in auditorium. While we have a fruitful collaboration in place with PIDE, as we collaborated with them in organizing Economy Festival in Lahore and a PIDE-funded project on an important area of graduate employability is being executed at LCWU. Dr. Aksar Shabir from Engineering Department and Dr. Huma Tausif is with this project. I strongly hope that this relationship will definitely grow further and strengthen in future. Dear students, today's session holds the key to the betterment of Pakistan, the need for comprehensive reforms. Our nation stands at a crossroad, and it is imperative that we embark on a path of transformation for a brighter future. First and foremost, we must focus on educational reforms. I think this is the basic key, and we should focus on the educational reforms in the beginning by enhancing access to education, improving curriculum relevance with entrepreneurship, and fostering innovation in our teaching methods. We can empower our youth to become the leaders and thinkers of tomorrow. By this transformation, we can go for that. Simultaneously, economic reforms are paramount. We must create an environment that encourages entrepreneurship, attracts foreign investment, like the funding from World Bank and other international agencies, and promotes sustainable economic growth. The sustainability in all process is very important. This involves streamlining bureaucratic process, ensuring transparency, and implementing policies that support job creation and industry development. Environmental conservation must also be a preference area. Implementing policies that promote sustainable development, renewable energy, and responsible resource management is crucial for safeguarding our natural resource for future generation. Climate change knows no borders, and we must play our part in global efforts to protect the planet. Lastly, fostering social cohesion and inclusivity is fundamental. Embracing diversity, promoting tolerance enhancement is very important, and ensuring equal opportunities for all citizens, regardless of gender, ethnicity, or socioeconomic background, will strengthen the social ecosystem of our nation. In conclusion, the future of Pakistan lies in the hands of its people. And through comprehensive reforms in education, economy, judiciary, healthcare, environment, and social structure, we can pave the way for a prosperous and harmonious nation. Let us unite in this endeavor, working hand in hand for a Pakistan that not only meets the challenges of today, but builds a legacy for a generation of future. Thank you very much. That's it.
आप अपने ऊपर आने तो आप I request you to be here. So thank you girls, thank you for being so wonderful. So finally the moment that you've been waiting for, the announcement of the poster and art winners. So the prizes will be given by our Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Shagufta Naz. I request Dr. Fahim Jahangir from the PIDE side to please join her, and Tobias from the World Bank. So please join us here. And Isa from the World Bank would break the surprise. So please be calm, please be seated. और जिसका नाम announce होता है, we're running short on time. Just run very quickly. ठीक है, बहुत जल्दी से आओ. अगर नहीं आओगे तो I think we'll give it to somebody else. No, we won't do that. That's just an empty threat.
So you have to stand there, huh? So it was really, really hard for us to make a decision. All the projects, the paintings, the graphic designs, the experiments were really, really very impressive, and many, many congratulations to you for the deep thought that went into it, for the artistic spirit, and the really complex depiction of these challenges that we face. But we had to make a few decisions, but congratulations to everybody who participated. We'll start with the 7 outstanding pieces that we ranked as high achievers. The first person is Fatima Kamran, interior design. Fatima, please come up. Fatima isn't here? Okay. Okay, let's announce all of them. The second is Laika Iqbal from graphic design. Then we have, okay. Then we have Annette Dawson and team from Boston, USA.
That's University of Bolton.
Oh, it says Boston. Oh, University of Bolton. हमने told the kids and they could have never mind.
No, that's also a problem because then everybody knows.
Yeah. Next we have Anusha Mohsen.
I suggest announce the next one.
And then, just in the interest of time, Kashif Khan, environmental sciences. Kashif is coming onto the stage now. Then we have Alisha Tahir from Gender Studies. Alisha. And as Alicia comes to stage, we have Arij Nasir from Visual Arts. Arij. Many congratulations. And now we'll go to the top 3 position holders, starting with the third best. It goes to Mishal Hajra from Graphic Design. As Mishal comes on the stage, the second prize goes to Mabrook from Visual Arts. And the top position holder is Afra Hafeez from Statistics.
If I may request Dr. Asifa Kamaal also to please join along with Afra. So now we have these souvenirs from the side of PIDE and World Bank for Dr. Sahab, हम देते जाते हैं आप खड़े for team at Lahore College Women University. So Madam Aap, Tobias or Dr. Fahim can do the honors. So this is not, forgive me, this is not in any order of seniority, but in the order of my own very forgivable memory. Professor Dr. Humaira Majid Khan, Dean Faculty of Pharmaceutical and Allied Health Sciences. Professor Dr. Saida Faliha Zara Kazmi, Vice Chancellor, University of Home Economics, Dean Faculty of Islamic and Oriental Learning. Come on, girls, clap. You know, these are your teachers, yes. So after this, Mr. Kadir Suleri, on behalf of the security team, which did immense work in organizing. Kadir Saab. After that, Sheikh Saab, please, the State Office for all the immense work that they do. Followed this, Dr. Naveed Iqbal on behalf of his team for the coverage that we've had today. Dr. Huma Tausif, a co-principal investigator in one of the PIDE-funded projects and the main organizers today. It's just Sir, iske baad sirf main. And after, in order to save, So after this, I'm the last one, promise, to get one of these. More seconds, 2 shields, 1. So quickly, jaldi se ji dono laiega. There's 1 shield from the Vice Chancellor, Lahore College, Women University, which Dr. Fahim is receiving on the behalf of PIDE. And the second one, in order to save your time, Tobias will receive on the behalf of World Bank. I'm assuming that clap was for the good work that all of you have put in. बहुत तंजीम से. Please feel free to leave, but do it in a way that it doesn't get chaotic and it doesn't hurt anybody. All guests, faculty are invited to please join us for the lunch outside.